Chapter 789. The Tian Fa forest covered an area of hundreds of millions of acres. From east to west, it spanned across the entire continent, occupying almost half of the space. How large was this area? There were not many peak level Xian beast kings, and only a small number of peak level 9 Xian beasts, but there were definitely more than 1,000,000 ordinary level 9 Xian beasts. Or even more. This kind of power coupled with an even greater number of level 8, 7, and 6 wait. Jun Moxie only felt dizzy. How could a mere few thousand people from the 3 Holy Lands compare to such a huge force? No wonder the 3 Holy Lands were always so afraid of Tian Fa. But these Xian beasts were really simple. With such a terrifying force, even if they wanted to dominate the entire continent, it would be too much. But in the past 10,000 years, it had never happened before. In fact, there was not even one with such ambition. This was truly strange miracle. A real miracle, Jun Moxie's confidence suddenly soared to the extreme. With such a powerful force in my hands, who the F*CK do I need to be afraid of? The 3 Holy Lands? What the F*CK? However, whether he was overflowing with confidence or indescribable shock, he still had to clean up this mess in front of him. If he really gave each level 9 Xian beast a portion of pills, then Jun Daxiao would not have to do anything else for the rest of his life. He could just focus on refining pills. This amount was really too terrifying. Looking at the 8 Xian beast kings standing at the front, Jun Daxiao's eyes suddenly turned and a plan came to his mind. At the front, Bear Mountain and Earthcracker, who were ready to take advantage of the situation, suddenly felt their scalps go numb. Are we going to be unlucky again? Sure enough, Jun Daxiao frowned suspiciously and slammed the table. Bear Mountain, Earthcracker, what the hell are the two of you doing? Didn't I tell you again and again that the lowest level 9 Xian beast is a peak level 9 Xian beast? Why did everyone come here? Is this how you convey your opinions? You really can't do anything right, but you're good at spoiling things. Bear Mountain's excited smile froze on his face, and his eyes widened. Oh, what? Jun Moxie squinted his eyes and continued to roar confidently. Look at you. If not for your big sister saying that you're a fool, I wouldn't have believed her. You're really pissing me off. If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have asked you two to pass the message. You've ruined everything. Bear Mountain said, huh, and immediately shut his mouth. Brother-in-law had already mentioned big sister, so it was better for him to shut his mouth. Otherwise, he would only need to give me pillow talk. At most, I'll just have a fever. If I grumble, I might not be able to explain myself clearly. After that, I'll definitely be in pain all over. I'll endure it. Earthcracker blinked his eyes in confusion. Then he said in a confused manner, Brother-in-law, this seems like Bear Mountain, who was beside him, poked him and whispered, if you don't want your whole body to hurt, shut up. These two idiots were old pawns. Earthcracker didn't understand what was going on, but he immediately shut his mouth. Brothers, we have the pills now. There's a lot of them. Jun Moxie ignored the two of them. He faced the crowd and roared. Suddenly, a wave of cheers resounded like a tsunami. It's just that I've refined a lot of pills this time, but it's still lacking compared to the number of our brothers. Everyone is aware of the situation in our Tian Fa forest. I had only intended to inform the level 9 peak Xian beasts to come here. After all, they're the only ones who are at the bottleneck of advancing. But I didn't expect that Tiger King and Bear King would send the wrong message. And that's why everyone has come here. This is my fault. It's my mistake. How could I have trusted those two? He sighed in disappointment. He wasn't sighing because of Jun Daxiao's poor judgment of people. Instead, he was sighing because he didn't have enough pills. It didn't seem like a big deal that he had come here for nothing. But his new residence seemed far away in the indefinite future. Tiger King and Bear King looked at each other in dismay. Brother-in-law, you're my brother-in-law. You can't be so sarcastic. It seems like, when did you ask us to send the message? Not to mention the bullsh *T difference between level 9 and level 9 peak Xian beasts. Why don't the two of us know about this? Shouldn't we at least have some conscience? We're not humans in our bones. But, brother-in-law, you're a real human. How can you make something out of nothing? How can you talk nonsense like that? Won't the two of us become street rats in Tion Fa if you do this? However, everything has its pros and cons. It's precisely because of the misunderstanding between the two great kings that I've come here to pass on a message to everyone. This will save everyone from having to travel a long distance again. June Moxie swept his gaze across the crowd and said loudly, "Everyone should know that the effects of pills are very overbearing. Even the pills that I've refined have a certain degree of danger. If you don't reach the level of level 9 peak Xian beasts, forcefully consuming it will not have any effect on your cultivation. There's even a high chance that your body will explode and you'll die. But if you consume it after you've reached the level of level 9 peak Xian beasts, not only will there be no side effects, there will also be no pain during the process of leveling up. This is the fundamental difference in levels. Everyone here is an intelligent person. I'm sure you all understand. So, I promise everyone here that no matter if you're a level 7, level 8, or level 9 peak Xian beasts, everyone must continue to cultivate hard. As long as you've reached the level of level 9 peak Xian beasts, you must immediately report to your king and come to me to collect the pills. Breaking through to the shape-shifting realm will cause your strength to increase by leaps and bounds, becoming a true expert. Those who have reached the level of level 9 peak Xian beasts can come to me to listen to the pills. As for those who have broken through to level 11 peak Xian beasts and above, they can even obtain a private house that I've built for them." June Moxie said solemnly, "This promise from today onwards will not change for the next 10 years. A wave of cheers instantly soared into the sky like a tsunami. It wasn't difficult for these level 9 Xian beasts to reach the level of level 9 peak Xian beasts. Some of them had strong inherited characteristics and didn't even need to cultivate. They could just eat and wait for their deaths. Once their bodies were fully grown, they would immediately reach the peak of their cultivation. However, breaking through to the shape-shifting realm was a matter of life and death. Now that they heard this news, how could they not be wild with joy? Level 9 Xian beasts and shape-shifting Xian beasts. That was a fundamental difference. The difference was a rather large divide. Just in terms of lifespan, there was a difference of a few hundred years. Also, as long as they reached the supremacy realm and above, they would be able to obtain that beautiful house. They had to achieve it even if they had to risk their lives. Now that they had a goal, they had to train with all their might. I say that, brother-in-law, if within 10 years you can't reach the pinnacle, what should we do? This was a big black bear covered in black fur. He stammered as he asked. It was obvious that he had just reached the level of level 9 and had only just learned how to speak. Moreover, as he spoke, his black eyes shrunk as he looked at Bear King. There was fear in his eyes, as well as panic and shyness, and his voice seemed to be very soft. It sounded a little like a woman's voice, a female bear. June Moxie was a little taken aback. This was the only female high-level Xian beast he had seen apart from Mei Shuyan and the Qian Sun Serpent Queen. Thinking of this, June Moxie looked around and realized that almost half of the level 9 Xian beasts here were female. Then, where had they been before this? What June Moxie did not know was that in the Tion Fa forest, especially among the high-level Xian beasts, the ratio of female Xian beasts was too low. So, if there was a large-scale battle, the female Xian beasts would not participate no matter what. This was also the tradition of Tion Fa for tens of thousands of years. As for Mei Shuyan and the Qian Sun, they were different and could not be mentioned in the same breath. If I can't achieve it within 10 years, then it's hard to say. I can't promise this. There are too many Xian beasts in our Tion Fa. If I promise 100 years, then I won't have to do anything else for the rest of my life. I'll just focus on concocting pills and repairing houses. June Moxie narrowed his eyes and rubbed his chin as he chuckled. He did not really want 10 years, but he wanted to set a deadline for these fellows. If the time was too short, none of them would be able to achieve it. But if the time was too long, none of them would have the drive to improve. So, the deadline of 10 years was deliberately suggested by June Moxie. It was not that he was afraid of frequent concocting pills and repairing houses. After all, it was so easy to become a venerable and above. Oh, then I will work hard. I will go and work hard now. That black bear's fur was soft and smooth, and there were rings of golden fur all over its body. Although it looked bloated, it still looked rather cute. Moreover, his personality was also a little shy. He seemed to be the extremely bashful type. Bear King's eyes that were still wide open earlier suddenly softened. He coughed heavily and said slowly, Are you from the Black Old Bear family? Heir, I am Lord Bear King. The black bear was startled and stammered. And a female bear that is close to adulthood? Bear Mountain's eyes narrowed. He even stuck out his tongue and licked his upper lip. He circled around the black gold bear, and suddenly his expression became more and more ambiguous. Yes, Lord Bear King, This pitiful female black gold bear looked at the supreme king of the bear family. Her eyes were filled with innocence and fear, and her words became more and more incoherent. What's your name? Bear King's voice became even more strange. It actually became very gentle and used a voice that was as tender as water to ask. However, Big Bear's voice had always been rough. So, it had suddenly become gentle, and it had given the other Xian Beast Kings goosebumps. June Moxie's hair had stood on end when he had heard it. The few Xian beasts that had already taken human form at the front were all winking at each other, not knowing what they were thinking. I am Bear, Xiao Wu. The black gold bear, Xiao Wu, became more and more nervous and stuttered more and more. She had no idea what this Bear King wanted to do. Her pair of huge bear paws seemed to be at a loss of what to do, and she simply didn't know where to put them. Xiao Wu, such a huge creature, actually had such an elegant name. She was really too talented, but she didn't live up to her name, right? However, Bear Mountain seemed to be very satisfied. He self-righteously put on a pleasant expression and said somewhat overbearingly, Xiao Wu. Oh, what a good name. Small and exquisite, cute and adorable. Marry me, be my wife, and give birth to little bears for me. Tomorrow is our little sister, Yiling's birthday. I wish her a happy birthday in advance. I hope that Yiling will be even happier and more beautiful in our evil monarch's big family. I hope that all the brothers and sisters can say, Happy birthday, little sister Yiling. In the book review section, let us bless our little sister. Chapter 790. Boom! The Xian beasts were in an uproar. June Moxie was so shocked that his mouth was crooked and his eyes slanted. He directly sat down and looked at Big Bear. This guy is too direct. What kind of adjectives are these? Where did he learn them from? This bear weighed at least 700 kilograms, but in Big Bear's eyes, it was small and dainty, cute and delightful. And this was only their first meeting, and this guy was already proposing. And it was so overbearing. Marry me, be my wife. Give birth to bears for me. What kind of proposal was that? If it were a human, they would go up to the girl they liked and say, Marry me, be my wife. Give birth to sons for me. Wouldn't they be beaten half to death? Then they would call her a lunatic and leave in disdain. But Long Crane and the rest just stood there. They did not seem to be surprised at all, much less interfere. How about it? Are you willing or not? Bear Mountain stared at her and asked nervously. I don't know. Little Dance looked around pitifully, as if asking for help. She took a few steps back, her heavy body almost falling to the ground. You don't know? You won't reject me if you don't know? Doesn't reject me mean you agree? If you agree, then it means you agree to be my wife. Come, my wife, let's go home and buy some time to make a little bear. Big Bear grinned and reached out his chubby bear paw, wanting to step forward and hold her hand. Little Dance was on the verge of tears when she saw this. She couldn't help but look at the older yellow bear not far away. Bear Mountain naturally noticed it as well. He pointed. You, come out. You're the leader of the yellow bears, right? The old bear walked over with a big smile. Lord Bear King, Yes, I'm the leader of the yellow bear's big treasure. I'm also Little Woo's father. Oh, so you're my father-in-law? Bear Mountain waved his hand. I'm sure you have no objections to our relationship. You should feel honored, right? Ah, father-in-law. The word father-in-law was something that Bear Mountain had learned from June Moxie recently. Yes, his wife's father was his father-in-law. Now that he had met Little Dance's father, he naturally wanted to show off his knowledge. Just now, he had said things like petite and cute to please Little Dance, but now that he had said father-in-law, he wanted to show that he was knowledgeable and different from everyone else. Yes, yes, I have no objections. I have no objections. It's very honorable. It is indeed very honorable, too honorable. The Black Gold Bear Tribe leader Xiong Debeo nodded and bowed. However, he did not understand what the word father-in-law meant, but he guessed that it was a form of respect. He said humbly, I do not deserve to be called father-in-law by Lord Bear King. You are my father-in-law. You are my father-in-law. June Moxie almost vomited a mouthful of blood and died. Sitting on the ground, he was already shocked to the point where his limbs were twitching and his body was convulsing after hearing those words. What the hell was going on? That won't do. I can't be your father-in-law. You old thing, you actually want to take advantage of me. Bear Mountain was about to explode in anger, but he controlled himself and said amiably, Forget it. Who asked you to be my father-in-law? Hurry up and go back to prepare the dowry. When I marry your daughter, you should at least make some preparations, right? Don't let your daughter marry too shabbily. She will be the queen of our bear tribe in the future. She will be the mother of the world, the ruler of all bears. And the pine fruit wine and honey biscuit from your side. It should be no problem to send 10,000 caddies of each over, right? Bear Mountain said casually. Yes, yes, I will definitely do that. Xiong Debeo agreed. Thus, under June Moxie's dumbfounded gaze, this marriage was settled just like that. June Moxie's jaw dropped. That works too? Mother of the world, the ruler of all bears. Oh my God, there was actually such a marriage proposal. This was only the first time they met, and he had already forcefully asked for a wife, and even chased after his father-in-law to ask for a dowry. Not only did he ask for a dowry, he even asked for a lion's share, and he was not polite at all, directly calling his father-in-law an old thing. Who would call their father-in-law like that? The most surprising thing was there was no obstruction at all, and it was settled just like that. A wife and a large dowry, everything. It seemed like this son-in-law of his was a bandit trying to kidnap the bride. No, even if he was a bandit kidnapping the bride, he should at least have some sweet words and honeyed phrases, or at least some promises. This fellow was worse than a bandit. What was this called? This world was too crazy. No, it should be said that the Shin Beast world was too crazy. What the hell was this? Congratulations, Bear King. Congratulations, Bear King. All the Shin Beasts congratulated him in unison, as if they were used to this kind of scene, and did not feel that there was anything wrong. Bear Mountain Sean grinned proudly, holding Little Dance's hand and walking back and forth in front of the crowd. He cupped his fists and returned the greeting. Thank you, brothers. From now on, this old bear is also a man with a wife. Little Dance followed behind him shyly, her head lowered shyly, her short tail swaying back and forth. There was not the slightest bit of grievance in her expression, as if she had been forced to marry someone else. Instead, there was a hint of joy on her face. Tiger King Earthcracker squinted his eyes and let out a strange cry of praise. At the same time, he swept his eyes across his own tribe. After a long while, he moved closer to June Moxie and sighed. AI, brother-in-law, look, that old bear fellow is really lucky. That bride is really beautiful, ah. What a pity. Why isn't such a beauty for my tiger tribe? In his words, there was actually a hint of covetous desire in his voice. June Moxie was genuinely startled. He squinted his eyes and looked at Earthcracker in disbelief. Fortune? Really beautiful? Such a beauty? Earthcracker, are you having a fever? What are you talking about? Brother-in-law, you're really... Look at that bear girl's black fur. How shiny, how alluring her golden fur is, and how healthy her figure is. And look at her face, how flat her nose is. TSK, those eyes are real bear eyes. And that mouth is really wide, ah? TSK, and those ears on her head, so tall and erect, and that big, but it's really the best of the best. It wouldn't be a problem for her to give birth to a few babies. The only flaw is that her tail is a little too short, but it's still not bad, mainly because of that huge butt. I've long heard that the black gold bear tribe has produced the #1 beauty of Tian Fa, and from the looks of it, it's indeed a well-deserved reputation. How does that saying go, right? Seeing is not as good as hearing. It really makes one's heart itch. How did fourth brother bear get to see her first? It's really a fool's luck. Tiger King Earthcracker said as he drooled. From the looks of it, if not for Bear Mountain snatching her first, he would have challenged him to a duel. June Moxie was stunned for a long time before his mouth twitched. Earthcracker, are you sure you're speaking from your heart? The #1 beauty of Tian Fa? She's the #1 beauty of Tian Fa. Brother-in-law, what are you saying? Is it surprising that she's the #1 beauty of Tian Fa? Could it be that only someone like my big sister is considered a beauty? She doesn't have a figure, and she doesn't have a butt. How can she give birth to a baby? When your son is born, you'll know how difficult it is. Earthcracker looked at June Dashao as if he was looking at a retard and said earnestly, Brother-in-law, cough cough, although everyone is very impressed with Big Sister, and her abilities are really outstanding, everyone respects her from the bottom of their hearts. But that face of hers is really a little too. Although that last Snake King's figure is also not good, her original form is that of a snake, and no matter how much she transforms, she'll still look like a bag of bones. But with Big Sister's high cultivation, why doesn't she make herself more beautiful? I have to say, brother-in-law, your sense of beauty is really too different. Brother-in-law, it's not that I want to criticize you, but sigh, marrying my big sister is really a waste of your talent. Earthcracker shook his head and sighed, and in June Moxie's ears, there was even a tone of relief, as if someone was willing to buy an old, sluggish product. What? Someone like Mei Shuiyin is not considered beauty? That kind of peerless beauty, that kind of bearing, that kind of celestial beauty is not considered a beauty in the Tian Fa forest? And listening to Earthcracker's words, it seems like she's a leftover woman. Marrying my big sister is really a waste of your talent. Don't you know that if your big sister goes out to find a husband, all the men in the Xianxian continent would immediately fill up the Tian Fa forest and level it? Wait a minute. You can call someone like Mei Shuiyin an ugly woman and say that I'm a waste of my talent. Isn't it saying that I'm so ugly that no one would care about me? June Moxie was stunned for a long time, and this soft knife stabbed him until the sky and earth were spinning. He was so angry that his hands and feet were trembling, and his face was deathly pale. Then his head fell on the table with a bang and bounced back and forth a few times. Oh God, kill me. I don't want to live anymore. I don't have the face to live anymore. It turns out that I'm actually a handsome man in the eyes of this group of Xian beasts with deformed aesthetic standards. Doesn't that mean Jun Dashao was speechless? It turns out that the aesthetic standards of the Tian Fa forest are very different from those of the secular world. It's completely opposite. Oh my God! At this moment, Bear Mountain heard the noise and walked over. He glared at Earthcracker and scolded. What nonsense are you talking about? How is Big Sister not beautiful? How is it a waste of brother-in-law's talent? What do you mean? Earthcracker was a little dumbfounded. Fourth brother, what did I say? I said what we think of Big Sister. Didn't you also? Bear Mountain slapped Tiger King's head with his bare paw and shouted, I'll teach you to talk nonsense again. Then, he said in what he thought was a very low voice, You idiot, are you trying to mess up Big Sister Huang's good things? Do you want Big Sister to continue staying at home? It's rare that brother-in-law doesn't mind Big Sister, and the two of them look at each other so well. It's like a tortoise looking at a mung bean, and you're trying to do something bad when they finally meet. Chapter 791. Bear Mountain slapped him again. What are you? You're just a sh*t stirrer. Hurry up and shut up. If you don't shut up, you're going to feel really uncomfortable later. The Tiger King had completely broken down and was on the verge of tears. Bear King thought that his voice was very soft, but with his voice, even if he intentionally lowered it, It was no different from a normal person's. Who could he hide it from? Right, he could even hide it from the Xian beasts in the distance. Jun Xiao, who had heard everything, was also dumbfounded. Ah, what rice? Could it be that his goddess-like little Xue Xue was actually a leftover woman in the Tian Fa forest that no one cared about? This was simply unimaginable. Bear Mountain saw that Jun Xiao's expression was a little off and hurriedly came up with a remedy. He walked over like a family man, rubbed his hands, and chuckled. Brother-in-law, what are you thinking about? That Tiger King doesn't know anything, and he even pretends to know. Actually, Big Sister is quite beautiful. Look, this is my wife. She's just passable. Her name is... Suddenly, he scratched his head and turned around. What's your name again? Little Dance, he said shyly. Yes, my wife is called Little Dance. She's just passable, definitely not the #1 beauty of Tian Fa. Brother-in-law, I'm the first brother-in-law to find a wife. This greeting gift. Bear Mountain stretched out his furry hands, looking like a creditor. Here. Jun Xiao, who was so shocked that he wanted to die, took out 3 pills and slapped them into Bear Mountain's hands. Bear King was stunned. Brother-in-law, aren't you messing with me? This is for a peak level 9. If my wife eats it, she'll explode. I'll be a bachelor again. Stupid. As long as there was a choice, there would be no problem. You could let her take the Heavenly Restoration pill first and increase her pure power by 50 years. Then, you could help her consolidate her realm. Wouldn't she be at the peak of level 9? What's wrong with taking the other 2 pills? Jun Moxie reminded the idiot through telepathy. He was also depressed. He was unprepared. Who knew that Bear Mountain would suddenly get a wife? This speed was too fast. The true speed of light. Good. Bear Mountain grinned. Brother-in-law is wise indeed. With your character, I have nothing to say about you being a good match for my big sister. Seeing that the other Beast Kings had turned their attention to him, and their ears perked up, the Bear King glared at them. What are you looking at? You guys won't miss out either. Hurry up and give it to me. Give it to my wife as a greeting gift. You don't even know how to be an uncle. This fellow actually managed to tie up the marriage within an hour, collect the betrothal gifts, and even the dowry. Then, in an extremely short period of time, Jun Moxie distributed the newly refined pills and hurriedly slipped away. He had no choice but to leave. There were so many Xian beasts, and every single one of them was looking at him with such fervent eyes. He could only hear Long Crane's solemn warning behind him. The matter of the pills is the greatest secret of our Tian Fa forest. If it is leaked out, I'm afraid that Tian Fa will never have a day of peace again. Furthermore, it will implicate big sister and brother-in-law. So, you must keep your mouth shut. If there's anyone who dares to say anything, then that person will be the common enemy of our Tian Fa. Jun Moxie smiled and disappeared into the Hongjun Pagoda again. He saw a small, white shadow moving back and forth, stirring up strong winds. Sometimes it formed a whirlwind. Sometimes it was like flowing clouds. Sometimes it was like thousands of flowers blooming. Sometimes it was like golden lightning falling from the sky. Mei Shuiyin was practicing her new moves. Jun Mo Xie stood there quietly and began to watch. After a long time, he frowned slightly. After a long time, Mei Shuiyin also noticed him. With a whoosh, she hid under a tree and panted lightly. Jun Moxie laughed and walked to her side. He looked into her eyes for a while until he saw Mei Shuiyin turn her head away in embarrassment. Then he chuckled and cautiously said, "These moves of yours are indeed powerful. So it's best to study them first. When you transform into your human form, you can practice them. After all, your current body is very different from your human form. If you really get used to it now, you won't be able to unleash its full power in the future. You must know that habit makes nature. You should understand what I'm saying, right?" Mei Shuiyin was deep in thought. Suddenly, her body shook and her eyes lit up. She turned back to look at him deeply and nodded her head lightly. Jun Moxie's words solved the biggest question that had been bothering Mei Shuiyin for a long time. Why was it that the profound techniques passed down by the previous generations of Tian Fa which the Xian beasts had been practicing since they were young, would be so different from what they had expected or what was recorded in the records when they truly had the ability to execute it. Why was it so different from what they had expected? Although it wasn't to the point where it was completely wrong and the power was still very great, it still felt like something was missing. So that's why. The problem lies in the words training hard since childhood. By the time the seniors were able to create their own profound martial arts moves, they had already transformed into human form. And the moves that they created at that time were naturally based on the human body. That was the best way to cultivate it. But they were the seniors of Tian Fa. They couldn't possibly leave their lifetime's worth of precious experience to outsiders. Naturally, they left it all behind in the Tian Fa forest. The Xian beasts of the later generations naturally couldn't be in human form when they were born. But high-level Xian beasts also had the qualifications to practice these moves from young. They trained even harder all the way until they took human form. And this was the natural habit that they had developed before they took human form. But it was this natural habit that prevented them from unleashing the full power of their moves. Because the beast form and the human form were ultimately two completely different concepts. But at that time, the habits that had been accumulated over the years would not change because of this, because of that. It would naturally become twisted. How could they unleash the full power of their moves? Such a simple question, but it had been troubling Tian Fa for so long. Until today, when Jun Moxie's unintentional words suddenly woke her up. Looking at Jun Moxie with her bright eyes, Mei Shuiyan's eyes were filled with warmth and gratitude. After a long time, that cute little body suddenly disappeared like a wisp of smoke. Not long after, it came back again. It was holding a ball of sand, and it sprinkled it on the stone surface. It was the sand that Jun Mo Xie had brought in when he poured water into the stone. You want to talk to me? Aya, I'm so stupid. Jun Moxie suddenly came to a realization. After Mei Shuiyan was beaten back to her original form, she had indeed lost the ability to speak. But this didn't mean that she couldn't write or recognize words. She could still listen to words. Mei Shuiyan glanced at him and rolled her eyes. Jun Moxie clearly saw her smile of disdain. You really need this lady to remind you of such a small matter and take the initiative to do it. You're really stupid. Although Mei Shuiyan didn't say it, Jun Moxie clearly heard it. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. I want to remind you of something. Mei Shuiyan stretched out her snow-white claws and wrote on the fine sand. What is it? This matter is about Qing Han, Xiao Yi, and the rest. Writing until here, Mei Shuiyan paused, as if she was considering her words. After a long time, she finally wrote, Time is fleeting, beauty is fleeting. Time is fleeting? Beauty is fleeting? What does that mean? Jun Moxie frowned and couldn't help but ask. Do you want me to marry them as soon as possible? No. Then you. This time, Mei Shuiyan did not stop. She continued to write eloquently and fluently. It was evident that she had considered this matter for a long time and was very thorough. I believe that as long as I have a few more years, I will be able to return to the pinnacle or even surpass the pinnacle. And with your current cultivation, you are also improving day by day. With our cultivation, we can expect to stay together for 1,000 years. It's not an extravagant hope, but Qing Han and Xiao Yi are different from us. Their origin power is really too weak. Even extending their lifespan is impossible in a short period of time, let alone maintaining their most beautiful appearance. Moreover, there is a limit to the consumption of medicinal pills. However, from what I can see, although the aptitude of the two of them is considered excellent, I'm afraid that cultivating to the supreme spirit Xian realm is still a long way off. At the very least, it will be difficult to achieve it within half a cycle of 60 years. Maybe after a few years, we will still be young, but they will be old. At that time, we don't need to say anything. I'm afraid that they won't stay by your side. And the most beautiful time for a woman in this world is never more than 5 or 10 years. By that time, it will be the cruelest and most fatal blow to both you and them. Mei Shuiyan tilted her head and looked at June Moxie with her crystal-clear eyes. Her eyes were filled with affection. She lowered her head and wrote, "I don't want you to suffer that kind of blow, because if there's a separation, it will be for a lifetime." Mei Shuyan stopped writing at this point. But June Moxie was dumbstruck. All this time, June Moxie had been thinking about the problem of everyone's lifespan, and he had solved it pretty well. But he had never thought about this. He thought that as long as there was life, it was possible to stay together. But he had never thought that there was one thing in this world that women would rather give up their lives to stay with, but they would always be helpless about it: appearance. To most beautiful women, if they could only choose between beauty and life, they would choose the former without hesitation. This was the saying, "Love beauty to death." Even if they could obtain immortality and eternal life, a peerless beauty would already be white-haired and senile by then, while their lover would still be as handsome and youthful as a young man. This was the cruelest and most fatal blow. How many years did a woman's youth have? Even 5 or 10 years would be too much. June Moxie, could not grow old, and so could Mei Shuyan. But Guan Qinghan, what about Dugu Xiaoi? What about his mother? None of them could. Chapter 792. How could Guan Qinghan and Dugu Xiaoi remain indifferent when they see that June Moxie and Mei Shuyan are still as handsome and beautiful as ever? In that case, the tragedy was almost destined. Even if June Moxie doesn't care about it, it's impossible for them to not care about it. But if they really left, how would June Mo Xie be able to accept it? But if he can't accept it, he won't be able to stop them. Because since ancient times, beauties are like famous generals. They're not allowed to see their hair turn white. This is the common pride of those peerless beauties. Once this pride was gone, then his heart would be as good as dead. Moreover, it's in contrast to the eternal youth of their sweethearts. If they were to wait until they cultivated to the spirit Xian realm before consuming the pills to increase their strength and prolong their lifespan, then using profound Xian arts to preserve their appearance, then during this period of time, it would be enough for their peerless beauty to slowly fade away, because it's not something that can be done in a short period of time. Mei Shuyan's words weren't alarmist words. She'd given a time limit, and it was already a conservative estimate. It would at least take half a 60-year cycle, which is equivalent to 30 years. This time limit was only achieved with the help of the most precious medicines that June Moxie had provided along the way. This matter that Mei Shuyan had brought up was like a wake-up call to June Moxie. It suddenly made him notice this pressing problem that needed to be solved. This won't do, that won't do. Then what should I do? June Moxie frowned and stood up. He clasped his hands behind his back and paced back and forth, deep in thought. But no matter how much he thought, he still couldn't come up with a solution. His eyes unintentionally swept past the Hongjun Pagoda, and an idea suddenly flashed in June Moxie's mind. Pill formula. That's right, pill formula. There were so many pill formulas in the Hongjun Pagoda. Perhaps there would be a pill that could preserve one's appearance. In the novels of his previous life, there was often a certain kind of elixir that couldn't improve one's power, recover one's primordial qi, or increase one's cultivation. It seemed to be useless, but wasn't the look-preserving elixir that could keep one's appearance permanently what he needed the most right now? In the past, he used to agree with it. How could such a thing with no practical effects be sought after by thousands of people who would not hesitate to buy it at sky-high prices? So the true meaning was actually here. June Moxie was like a drowning man who had suddenly grabbed onto a life-saving straw. He immediately put his thoughts into action and earnestly searched through the Hongjun Pagoda's pill formula in his mind. This was the first time he had searched so seriously ever since he had obtained this thing. After an unknown amount of time, he finally found a usable pill formula. However, it was better not to have found it. Because of this result, June Mo Xie's heart sank to the bottom of the valley. There was hope, but there was no hope. Extreme beauty retaining pill, regardless of level, would grant one eternal youth, reconstruct one's meridians, and attain the extreme female body, making one immortal and imperishable, unable to enter the cycle of reincarnation. Refining level. Hongjun Pagoda, 9th level. Required herbs. A Dumber grass, ageless root, 3 lives vine, rootless flower, restriction. Can only be consumed by females. Hongjun Pagoda, 9th level. And he had only broken through to the 5th level of the Hongjun Pagoda after much difficulty. From the looks of it, every level's breakthrough would be thousands of times harder than the previous ones. The amount of time needed was also far beyond the horizon. Furthermore, there wasn't a single one of the medicinal herbs mentioned, whether it was in Tion Fa Forest or the 9 Nether First Young Master's inheritance. But this was not the most crucial point. The most crucial point was Hongjun Pagoda, 9th level. Isn't this toying with me? Is this still considered hope? Jun Moxie scratched his head in frustration. 9th level. Even a deity would not be able to cultivate to the 9th level within 10 years. Extreme beauty retaining pill, grant eternal youth, reconstruct one's meridians, and attain the extreme female body. Jun Moxie did not know what the extreme female body was, but just by looking at the description, this pill was definitely not ordinary. It was definitely not something that the beauty retaining pill in those cultivation novels could compare to, but I'd rather have the beauty retaining pill. Why doesn't the Hongjun Pagoda have such a common item? Immortal and imperishable, unable to enter the cycle of reincarnation. This was equivalent to becoming a deity after eating one. How could such a pill be easy to make? And in reality, the ranking of the extreme beauty retaining pill was only below the 9 Revolutions golden pill, which was ranked first. 9 revolutions of heaven, 9 revolutions of creation, 9 revolutions of heaven, 9 revolutions of heaven. Jade Tower dances gracefully. Mei Shuiyan looked at Jun Moxie quietly. After a long time, she seemed to sigh. Slowly wiping away the words on the fine sand, she quietly wrote, "If 10 years is not enough, then what about 500 years? 500 years? Shuiyan, do you have any other methods? You know what to do, don't you?" Jun Moxie suddenly paused and asked anxiously. According to Senior Tion Fa's ancient legends, in the misty mansion, there is a rainbow holy tree. The fruits of that rainbow holy tree are divided into 7 colors and are known as the 7-colored holy fruits. And in the Heaven Saint Palace of the 3 Holy Lands, there is a heavenly Saint Lotus Pond, and in the pond, there's a 9-segment exquisite lotus. 1 7-colored holy fruit of each color, consumed together with the petals of the 9-segment exquisite lotus, will increase one's Xian Qi by 500 years. Furthermore, it will allow one's appearance to not change for 500 years, maintaining one's appearance at the moment of consumption. Mei Shuiyan seemed to have expended a lot of effort to write these words. Furthermore, there were 7 to 8 interruptions in the middle, as if unwilling to continue writing. But in the end, she still wrote it down. After she finished writing, Mei Shuiyan hurriedly wrote again. "If not for the fact that you have that kind of mysterious movement technique, I would definitely not tell you. But you need to know that these 2 places are extremely dangerous places, and the degree of danger is even higher than Tion Fa's ferocious lands. And this tree and lotus are treasures that these 2 places view as life itself. I really do not wish for you to take the risk, but I can also see the weight they hold in your heart. Furthermore, there is also mother, 3rd uncle, and the rest. If you do not do this, in the future, you will definitely have to face life and death again and again. And at that time, your long life will become an eternal burden. Even if you have a heart of stone, I'm afraid you will not be able to endure life and death again and again without being able to do anything about it. Sooner or later, there will come a day when you will be exhausted both physically and mentally. I really do not wish to see that day. But I also do not wish for you to take the risk. So, please promise me, unless you have complete confidence. Otherwise, you absolutely cannot try. At the very least, you must wait until I recover my strength. Little sister Qinghan and the rest can still wait for a few years. When I recover my full strength, I will go with you. That way, No matter what the result is, we will be together, and my heart will be at ease. After writing all this, Mei Shuyan looked at the words on the ground in a daze. After a long time, she slowly turned her head and looked at June Moxie with deep emotions in her eyes. She wrote heavily on the ground with one hand, "Promise me." June Moxie took a deep breath and said word by word, "I promise you." A solemn expression appeared in Mei Shuyan's eyes. She sighed and wrote, "I originally did not want to say it, but now we are already in an irreconcilable situation with the three holy lands. Even if we do not snatch their 9-segment exquisite lotus, they will definitely put us to death. As for the Misty Mansion, they have already revealed their wild ambitions towards Tion Fa when a Misty Mansion was covered in mist. Both sides are already destined to be enemies and not friends." June Moxie smiled calmly and said slowly, "Looks like the enmity between us and these few places is really F*King fated. Even if we do not want to be enemies, it is impossible." He lowered his eyes and said quietly, 500 years is enough." He slowly clenched his fist and said in a low voice, "This rainbow tree and 9-segment exquisite lotus are both mine. They must be mine." Mei Shuyan looked at him quietly, a trace of mischievousness in her eyes. She wrote, "They are both good girls. You must not let them down. Emos, yeah. I can see that Miss Han is also very interested in you. And Princess Raimu, your luck with women is really not shallow." June Moxie instantly became awkward and said, "Actually, the only one I like the most is you." Mei Shuyan's small body straightened up and sat cross-legged. She hugged her 2 snow-white paws in her bosom, raised her head, and slanted her eyes. She put on a posture of "I don't believe you at all," and rolled her eyes. But she did not know that this posture was really extremely adorable, especially when she did it with her current appearance. It was simply too mesmerizing. June Moxie's eyes instantly widened. He grabbed her and kneaded her. Mei Shuyan turned pale with fright. She screamed and miserably twisted away from the devil's claws, running far away. June Moxie laughed heartily. He felt that all his worries had been swept away. After a long time, he once again sank his consciousness into a sea of knowledge and carefully searched for the pill recipe. He had just broken through to the 5th level, so there should be new pills for him to refine, right? After searching for a while, June Moxie suddenly discovered that there were 3 kinds of pills suitable for him to refine in the 5th level. Grade 3 Spirit Pill, Infinite Pill, Mysterious Pill, Heaven Pill. June Mo. Xie carefully looked at the specific effects of these 3 pills, as well as the basic requirements for refining them. Then, he finally decided to refine these 3 pills. He could not help but be tempted. The effects of these 3 pills were really too tempting. After taking the Infinite Pill, it could repair the meridians of the human body, increase the flexibility of the meridians, and expand the dantian. According to June Moxie's understanding, it should be taken by cultivators who were above the realm of Tianxian. Compared to the previous 3 pills, it was 1 level lower. Mysterious Pill, it could cure any injuries, regenerate flesh and bones, revive the dead, revive the soul, and prolong life. It was extremely magical and could ignore internal and external injuries. Within the moment of taking it, no matter internal or external injuries, it could be completely healed. It could ignore any level. As for the usage limit, it was still limited to the sky profound realm. The heavens extremes pill could be consumed by anyone above the sky Xian realm. Every time one of them was consumed, it would increase one's pure strength by 60 years. The upper limit of each person's consumption was 3 pills, and the interval between consumption was 3 months. Note, it could only increase one's power, not the level of one's soul. In other words, as long as an expert above the realm of Tianxian took 3 heaven pills in 9 months, he could increase his dark force by 180 years, and there were no side effects. Chapter 793. However, this couldn't raise the level of one's spirit. Looks like matters like this still required one to comprehend and experience it on their own. And this wasn't like reaching the heavens in a single step. For example, If a 3-year-old child were to consume this pill, his physical strength would reach that of an adult, or even far surpass that of an adult, but his intelligence would still remain at that of a 3-year-old. However, to experts above Tianxian, this didn't seem to be a big deal. The level of one's spirit could be raised during battle. After carefully checking the required medicinal ingredients, Jun Moxie was finally relieved. He had all the tins of medicinal ingredients needed to refine the medicinal pills. Among them, there were a few that were of especially high quality. Although the medicinal ingredients provided by Tian Fa Forest weren't present, they were present in the 9 Nether First Young Master's inheritance. It was just that their age was greatly exceeded. The highest age of the medicinal ingredients required was 5,000 years and above. But the ones that Jun Moxie could produce were 10,000 years and above, or even tens of thousands of years old. To be honest, from a cultivator's point of view, using medicinal ingredients that were thousands or even tens of thousands of years old to refine these seemingly useless medicinal pills was a reckless waste of God's gifts. The only benefit was that there were no side effects. In fact, the medicinal properties of those high-quality medicinal ingredients were used to balance the medicinal effects to achieve an effect without any side effects. It could be said to be a pure waste. But the starting point of Jun Daxiao and his family and friends was too low. They couldn't even consume the higher quality medicinal ingredients. Only these 3 medicinal pills could be used. Also, Jun Daxiao really had too much medicine. Even if he knew it was a waste, he didn't feel the slightest bit of heartache. In for a penny, Jun Moxie decided to start refining the pills immediately. At the very least, he had to refine all the medicinal pills that those people from the Heaven Destroyer and Spirit Devourer needed and create his own invincible iron army. He had to complete it at all costs and create a venerable army that could intimidate the entire world, or even a saint army. Jun Moxie thought about it and felt that that scene was really too cool. As for the 7-color tree and the 9-segment lotus, those 2 places would be the biggest targets of his travels in the martial world. Once Tian Fa's matter is settled, I will immediately set off to search for those 2 miraculous medicines. No regrets can happen to me. 3 days later, when Jun Moxie came out, he was surprised to find that Bear Mountain and the others were gathered outside the Jun residence. Moreover, their eyes were cautiously staring in one direction, the south. The Misty Mansion was located in the Misty Land. Why is everyone gathered here? Did something happen? Jun Moxie asked, puzzled. With the tenacity of these beast kings, they wouldn't have gathered in one place unless there had been an extremely strange turn of events. Brother-in-law, you were in closed-door training, so you don't know about this. The Misty Mansion has been moving for 2 days now, and it's getting bigger and bigger. Long Crane sighed and said, I'm afraid something has happened inside. He wanted to explain further, but Junimo Xie suddenly felt the ground beneath his feet shake with a boom. All of a sudden, a bone-chilling sense of fear rose up within him. It's this shaking. The sealed 9 Nether 14th Young Master is trying to break the seal again. Long Crane's expression was very serious as he said, It's been happening all these years. It was a little better in the past few years, with only slight tremors. But in the past few years, although the seal is still stable, the tremors are getting bigger and bigger, and the tremors are getting more and more intense. Especially this year, the tremors are getting more intense and frequent. Could it be that the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters are going to break the seal and come out? Jun Moxie's eyes lit up. Jun Daxiao was very interested in the so-called 9 Nether Young Masters, even more than the strange races. To be honest, Jun Daxiao really didn't care much about the strange races. Only the 9 Nether Young Masters, who came from the same origin as the 9 Nether First Young Master, would be worthy of Master Daxiao's attention. The possibility of this is very high. Although there have been many attacks in the past, they've never been as violent as this. Even if they manage to stabilize it this time, I believe they won't be able to stabilize it the next time. Long Crane had a worried look on his face. If the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters really come out, I'm afraid it'll be a catastrophe, and the disaster might be even worse than the strange races. What catastrophe? How can the 9 Nether Young Masters be considered a catastrophe? I've also heard Shui Yin mention the 9 Nether Young Masters before. Although they're all strong and have the ambition to dominate the Xin continent, they've never really wreaked havoc in the world, nor would they cause harm to the common people. They're just a bunch of arrogant lunatics. How can they be compared to those strange races who are worse than beasts? Besides, if there were no such people in this world, it would be too boring. Jun Moxie's eyes flashed, and he chuckled. Come, let's go and take a look. Who knows? Maybe we can welcome the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters to break out of their seclusion. The group arrived at the mysterious Misty Mansion, and the tremors here were even more intense. The Misty Illusory Manor was about 400 to 500 li away from the June residence. This kind of distance was truly not considered short. But if the 9 Nether 14th Young Master really managed to break free and clash with the Beast Kings, the June Manor side would also be affected. After all, a battle of that level could not be judged by common sense. According to what Mei Shui Yan had said previously, all the hills within a radius of a few thousand miles have been flattened. One more mere 500 miles. The earth continued to tremble, and a large number of cracks appeared on the ground. Many of the thick and solid branches of the surrounding trees were broken by the violent tremors and fell to the ground. There were also many large boulders jumping crazily on the ground. Not far away, a small mound of soil also jumped and scattered, and then turned into dust and floated on the ground. Jun Moxie stood outside the Misty Mansion, feeling the tremors in his body. His sharp eyes looked at the churning fog in the Misty Mansion, as if he could see through it. From the Misty Mansion, there was a long, low roar that seemed to be very far away, very long, and yet close at hand, penetrating straight into the soul. Long Crane, Bear Mountain, and the others all had serious expressions on their faces as they looked at this strange scene in front of them. Their expressions were full of worry. Suddenly, after a huge tremor, a huge bird with rainbow-colored feathers let out a long cry and rose from the mist of the Misty Illusory Manor. With a flap of its wingspan was over 100 zhang wide, and its entire body shot into the sky like a bolt of lightning, disappearing without a trace in an instant. However, Junimo Xie was able to clearly judge the moment the bird took flight. That 7-colored giant bird was not a real bird with the characteristics of life. Instead, it was some kind of special energy that was specially created to transmit information. Once it completed its mission, it would immediately dissipate. What is this thing? A phantom phoenix. It really is a phantom phoenix. Long Crane groaned. It finally appeared. The other Beast Kings also had a panic-stricken look on their faces. After all, the Beast Kings of Tian Fa had always been thick-skinned and bloodthirsty. So, the incident must have been very shocking. A phantom phoenix? What is that thing? Isn't it something that belongs to Tian Fa? Jun Moxie looked at the place where the phantom phoenix disappeared and asked softly. The so-called phantom phoenix is a strange thing that was left behind by the experts of the Misty Mansion when the seal was completed. It is called a phantom phoenix. At that time, the expert had explained that if the seal could no longer suppress the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters one day, the Phantom Phoenix would transform into the shape of a phoenix and fly back to the Misty Mansion in advance to report the news. The Phantom Phoenix will appear, and the seal will be broken. Long Crane's expression was solemn as he said in a low voice, and the experts of the Misty Mansion will also rush here in the shortest time possible. Battle the 9 Nether 14th Young Master. We must kill him or force him back to the sealed land to seal him again. But no matter what the situation is, a world-shaking battle is inevitable, and Tian Fa Forest would inevitably suffer a calamity as well. Since the incident happened here, the battle will definitely take place here. There was a strong anger in Bear Mountain's expression. The participants of this battle will at least be Saint King level experts, and there may even be a few Holy Emperor level experts. In fact, it wouldn't be difficult to destroy half of Tian Fa Forest in a battle of this level, if one were to say it seriously. The Misty Mansion had tricked many of the Tion FA seniors into being trapped in the mist of the Misty Mansion to guard the seal for such a long time. It's fine if that's the case, but do you want to destroy our home? Yes, that must be the case. Long Crane's expression turned ugly. It seems that when the Misty Mansion was sealed, they had already planned for today. Their goal was not only to seal the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters, but also to destroy the Tion FA Forest. They even wanted to use us to fight the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters first, and then clean up the mess and reap the benefits. Damn it. Really, really damn it. All the Beast King's expressions were instantly filled with indignation. With such a connection, everyone understood the importance of this matter. Towards the sinister intentions of the misty, illusory manner, he could no longer tolerate it. Everyone, there's no need to be so pessimistic. This battle may not be unavoidable, right? Perhaps we can lure the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters to fight somewhere else. Won't we be able to avoid the tragedy of Tion FA then? Jun Moxie's expression also darkened. If that was really the case, was his home going to be destroyed right after he moved here? So he made this suggestion. Although this method was a way to divert the trouble and not solve the root of the problem, it was the most beneficial for Tion FA. Brother-in-law, the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters who had just broken the seal, is at the weakest because he needs to break the seal, and the consumption will be huge. Only then will it be the best time to subdue him again. With the 9 Nether 14th Young Masters' heaven-defying recovery abilities, even if it's just for a day or half a day, it'll be more than enough for him to recover a terrifying amount of strength. That's something that the 3 Holy Lands and the misty, illusory manner will not be able to tolerate. Chapter 794. Jun Moxie snorted. Let's not talk about the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters first. We can't stand the 3 Holy Lands or the Misty Mansion. Are we going to destroy them all? Well, a load of nonsense. What kind of logic is this? Brother-in-law, whether this matter is reasonable or not, there's nothing we can do about it. Long Crane said bitterly. The illusory phoenix has already left, which means that the seal can only be maintained for a short period of time. The true experts from the misty, illusory manor and the 3 Holy Lands will definitely rush here as soon as possible, and they will all be Saint King and Holy Emperor level experts. If we don't let them in, it means that we will become the enemies of the entire human race. Then, they will have an excuse to join forces to deal with Tion FA, and it will be logical. If we let them in, even if we suffer some losses after this battle, Tion FA will still be Tion FA after a few years of recuperation. Besides, they came in to deal with the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters for the sake of the people. We have no reason to not let them in. In fact, we have to help them. What is this? If that's the case, aren't we letting them do whatever they want? They came here to cause trouble and destroy our homes. Do we still have to cheer for them and welcome them with a smile? This is bullsh*t. Jun Moxie shook his head. Also, since they're Saint King and Holy Emperor level experts, do they still need our permission to enter the Tion FA forest? Can't they just enter directly? Who can stop them? If we stop them, we will become the enemies of the entire human race. I would like to ask, do the people of the world treat Xian beasts as their companions? Is killing Xian beasts wantonly and hunting Xian done by races other than humans? Besides, the people of the world, have the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters really harmed the people of the world? The 9 Serenities and 14 Masters only wanted to conquer the 3 Holy Lands and the Misty Mansion. What does it have to do with the world? Have the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters ever taken the initiative to harm Tion FA Xian beasts? Why should you help those hypocrites against him? Do you really have the so-called standpoint you speak of? Jun Moxie asked sharply. As soon as this question was asked, all the Beast Kings looked at each other in dismay. That's right. Before this, when it came to dealing with the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters, there was only one resounding slogan. For the people of the world, Everyone knew that the 9 serenities and 14 masters was a peerless demon. Once it came out, it would be a catastrophe. But in actual fact, after the 9 nether young masters appeared, their slogan was very clear. Although their ambitions were great, whether it was unifying the world or commanding the world, it didn't seem to have anything to do with the common people of the world. Because what were the common people? The common people are the common people. No matter how strong the ruler was, the common people were not affected at all. All the common people wanted was a simple life. As long as they could eat their fill, wear warm clothes, and continue living, it was fine. As for who the ruler was, the common people would not care much. There must be a ruler in the world, but who the ruler was not important to the common people. The only ones who were truly threatened by them were the higher-ups of this continent, the 3 holy lands, and the misty, illusory manor. As for the common people of the world, they were the targets that the 9 nether young masters, these arrogant lunatics, did not even bother to look at, just like how dinosaurs did not care about ants. They would only pay attention to experts who were strong enough to threaten their rule. Brother-in-law, you mean? Could it be that this is just an excuse? Long Crane's eyes widened in disbelief. No one would be able to accept the fact that a belief that had lasted for thousands of years was shattered in an instant. The common people of the world, the common people of the world. How can everything involve the common people of the world? These bunch of hypocrites. June Moxie raged. Why are all these birdmen so hypocritical? Can't they just say that they don't want to be suppressed by others and not be ruled by another strong person? Why do they have to come up with such a ridiculous excuse? It's like they're all sages. There's always a need for an excuse, and a dignified one is always better. Bear Mountain said in a low, muffled voice. Excuse? Oomph. June Moxie's sharp eyes looked at the Misty Mansion and said, if that's the case, you guys can leave first and prepare to welcome the Saint Kings in. I'll stay here for a while longer. I really don't want to face those *T hypocrites. Long Crane and the rest sighed and bade farewell to June Moxie before leaving. June Emocia was the only one left in this place after a while. No matter what, I will not allow you hypocrites to destroy my home, the home of so many simple Shin beasts. June Moxie thought fiercely in his heart. Perhaps it's very satisfying to bully Tion Fa and make use of Tion Fa. But now, the situation is different. Because I, June Moxie, am in Tion Fa right now. I'm not like those simple-minded Shin beasts. The expression on June Moxie's face fluctuated, as if he was thinking about something intensely. After a long time, he suddenly gritted his teeth and a crazed expression appeared on his face. I, June Moxie, will never be a stray dog. Even if it's the Holy Emperor and the Misty Mansion, it's still not enough. The heavens are watching the actions of man. Since I've settled down in Tion Fa on the eve of the 9 serenities and 14 masters breaking the seal, it means that the heavens will not tolerate the despicable actions of you hypocrites. I will let those sanctimonious hypocrites know that those who scheme against others will be schemed against by others. Let's see who can scheme better and who can play the other to death. Jun Dashao's body suddenly disappeared from where he was standing. His physical body suddenly turned into an illusory shadow. In a flash, even this illusory shadow also disappeared. The tremors on the ground also became stronger. The power that seemed to want to destroy everything under the ground also seemed to be getting stronger and stronger. It was as if that ancient demon god would return to the world at any time. A sharp whistling sound rang out from the mist of the Misty Mansion. In the 2 months that the June family moved to the Tion Fa forest and made arrangements for their permanent residence, the entire continent was peaceful and tranquil. A few days after the June family's retreat, a lot of strange people arrived in Tianxiang City. They were inquiring about something and asking about something. The original location of the June family's mansion would have several people entering it every night. Especially the small courtyard that June Moxie used to live in, it was a place that those mysterious people would stop by. Then, there was also the grave of the affectionate couple. That strange place that suddenly appeared overnight attracted even more people. Every blade of grass and every tree was carefully investigated. Everyone who had anything to do with the Jun family had been investigated by unknown people during this period of time. Regarding this phenomenon, the emperor of Tianxiang, Yang Huainong, adopted Li Yuan's strategy. He let it go, never asked about it, and acted as if he didn't know anything. Finally, after half a month, these mysterious people disappeared without a trace overnight. There was no trace left, as if they had never appeared in the first place. Not even a single thing in the Jun family was touched. Not even a blade of grass or a tree was destroyed. At the same time, all the great families on the continent were in an uproar, because the Duanmu and Sikong families, which originally belonged to the middle tier of power on the continent, suddenly declined overnight. The businesses that belonged to these two families were cut off overnight. All the business networks, all the customers, cut off contact with these two families almost at the same time. This was simply unimaginable, because no matter who was behind this, it would not be done so cleanly and neatly without any casualties. But such an unimaginable thing had happened in such a bizarre way. It had really happened. The products produced by the private workshops of the two great families, no matter how exquisite and popular they were, all of them became unsold overnight. Even the products that could be sold for a sky-high price had become worthless dog shit after this one night. There was no place to sell the backlog of goods, and all the import channels had been cut off inexplicably. Furthermore, many problems had appeared within the families. Many of the children from the side branches had started to set up their own mountains, leaving the original scope of the families. These children from the side branches had also taken away a lot of the family's business. But the strange thing was that as long as it was the business they took away, it was normal. There was no impact at all. Even those businesses that no one was interested in yesterday, once they left the original family, they immediately returned to their original status, and even had room for a large increase in value. In just one night, these two families were almost at the end of their ropes. The only thing they could do now, other than to live off their savings, seemed like there was nothing else. But the two great families did not express any dissatisfaction. They only silently endured everything. The magnificent jewel halls that Blizzard Silver City had set up in the various countries of the continent were also closed down at the same time. Resources and personnel were not moved, but everything was sent back to Blizzard Silver City at the same time. Blizzard Silver City also did not raise any objections, as if this matter was very normal. On the contrary, the Dongfang family, who had announced their comeback, was not suppressed at all. If the other three families were suppressed because of the Jun family, then the Dongfang family, which was closer to the Jun family, was showing a trend of prosperity. But what was going on? 1 month after the Jun family retreated, the Dongfang family announced their comeback. The Xian beasts left Tian Fa, and the sword peak collapsed. Since this oath had been broken, even if the Dongfang family knew that it was not a good time to make a comeback, the oath had been broken, and the whole world was watching. They had no choice but to make a comeback. Moreover, there were many people who were urging, waiting, and watching, especially the members of the Dongfang family. They could not wait any longer. For a whole 10 years, everyone in the Dongfang family had been holding back too much. They desperately needed to vent. They needed to use the reputation of the Dongfang family as assassins to prove the glory of the Dongfang family in the past. After careful consideration, the old lady of Dongfang continued to observe for another month, thinking that even if the 3 holy lands were to suppress them, it would only be a blockade of all their businesses, and it would not be a big deal for the Dongfang family to return to their previous life of retirement. After all, with the status of the 3 holy lands, they could not do something as despicable as openly attacking the Dongfang family. After much consideration, under the strong appeal of many family members, the old lady was in a dilemma and finally announced her comeback, announcing to the continent. The family of assassins of the past had returned. Following that, something strange really happened. During this period of time, it has been 2 nights. Many brothers asked me, "Aren't you anxious to see your monthly votes overtaken?" I'm very anxious. Moreover, I have a few chapters in my hands, but I can't use them all. That day when I went home, my mom said, "Great, we can have a comfortable new year this year." When she said this, she seemed very satisfied. I calculated carefully. Not counting growing up, I joined the Army after graduation, and I spent the new year in the Army for several years. After coming back, I went to work in another city. I only returned on the 29th of the 12th month and left in a hurry on the morning of the second day. Until 2009, when I returned home, I was lying in the hospital with a broken leg during the new year. How could my mom and dad have the mood to celebrate the new year? In 2010, in order to make money to pay off the debt, I still spent the whole night writing on the 30th of the Chinese New Year. This year, it is 2011. No matter what, I have to spend the new year with the two old people. These few days, I have been writing 8,000 to 9,000 words every day, trying to save a chapter for the new year. Since the 27th of the 12th month, I have been going back to my hometown to accompany my parents. It is not that I do not want the monthly votes, but there is something more important than the monthly votes, and that is my family, my parents, and my family. After 2 chapters in a row, I do not have the face to ask for the monthly votes. Therefore, I have not asked for the votes. I only hope that my brothers and sisters can understand my feelings. This year, I want to spend the new year with my family and enjoy the new year to the fullest. After the new year, I will continue to release them. Thank you. During the new year, I will automatically release 2 chapters every day. If I have enough chapters, I will automatically release 4 chapters on the night of the Chinese New Year to celebrate the new year with everyone. Chapter 795. Ever since the old lady of Dongfang announced the Dongfang family's comeback, the Dongfang family's assassination orders had been pouring in like snowflakes. It was as if the whole world had accepted this family of assassins overnight. The price of every order was sky high. For example, the price of assassinating an Earth Xian expert used to be 100,000 silvers. But now, people were offering 200,000 silvers, even 300,000 silvers. The price had doubled. However, the people they were supposed to assassinate were all experts. If there were 1 or 2 such orders, the Dongfang family would not be afraid. They would even be pleasantly surprised. Even if there were a few more orders, they would be able to swallow them all. But now, there were hundreds, thousands, even thousands of orders. Among them, there were Tian Xian, Shun Xian, and even supreme martial artists. And not just a few. 4 of the current 8 great supremes had actually appeared on the list of people entrusted to him. No matter how powerful the Dongfang family was, they would not be able to swallow all of them. If they were to force it, then the only result would be that all the outstanding assassins of the Dongfang family would die in these missions. Even the 3 Dongfang swords would not be able to survive. The Dongfang family would completely collapse. However, the Dongfang family had officially announced their comeback. If they were to retreat now, then it would be equivalent to being suppressed by these missions. If that happened, the Dongfang family would become the eternal laughingstock of the whole continent. From then on, the Dongfang family would no longer exist in the martial world. But if they were to accept all of them, the result could only be the same: destruction. The Dongfang family could be said to be facing death if they advanced, and death if they retreated. They could not advance or retreat, and there was no way out. Every order had a reason, and it was a very legitimate reason, in line with the Dongfang family's requirements. Many of the orders were even sent with deposits. There was no lack of sincerity, and these orders were sent separately, in batches. Since the Dongfang family had returned, the contacts who had been stationed in various places naturally had to be sent out again. These people had been idle for 10 years, and all of them had been bored to the point of insanity. Who didn't want to show off their skills when they went out? Therefore, the informants of the Dongfang family, who had been assigned to the contact points in the 10 regions, were revived at the same time. And every contact had received quite a number of orders. In the past, this kind of thing was basically in the scope of big business. Even when the Dongfang family was in its heyday, it was still very rare. Therefore, every contact felt that they had made a great contribution. They accepted the requests one by one and sent them to headquarters. One person might not bring a lot, or even a very good result. But when all the results were gathered together, the result directly changed. Such a rich result could drive the Dongfang family to death at once. The old lady of Dongfang clearly understood that all this was clearly the revenge of the three holy lands. The most secretive way of revenge, and the most naked way of revenge. They wouldn't do it openly, because they would never accept the condemnation of the world. But they used this kind of legitimate way to drive the Dongfang family to death. But as long as it was someone with eyes who couldn't see it, or they were forcing Jun Moxie, who had retreated into the Tian Fa forest, to come out again. Because all of this was because of Jun Moxie, Dongfang family headquarters. Mother, should we inform Mo Xie? There are so many orders, and all of them have a time limit. We definitely can't finish them all. Dongfang Wenjian asked cautiously. The old lady of Dongfang was sitting on the chair, thinking about something with a gloomy face. When she heard this, she immediately flew into a rage. You're Mo Xie's uncle, and you actually have the cheek to say such words. Isn't this all a plot by the three holy lands to deal with my grandson? If you inform Mo Xie, wouldn't it be exactly what they want? If Mo Xie comes back, and something happens to him because of this, how will you face your sister? Even if the Dongfang family is really dead, we can't drag my grandson down with us. The old lady's eyes flashed coldly. If anyone secretly tells Mo Xie, don't blame me for being merciless. The Sikong family and the Duanmu family suffered such a blow, and even though we know that it was because of Mo Xie, those two families still chose to endure it silently and didn't ask for help from Mo Xie. Could it be that we, as Mo Xie's maternal uncle's family, are his relatives less important than those two families? Q-Sword, aren't you ashamed to say such words? Dongfang Wenjian's face was full of shame. His original intention was just to ask, but he didn't expect to be reprimanded mercilessly by his mother. Dongfang Wenqing sighed and said, Mother is right. Their goal is to make us seek help from the Tian Fa forest, since they've been able to force us into such a situation without even batting an eyelid. I'm even sure that they must have prepared an extremely powerful move. As long as Mo Xie appears, what awaits him will definitely be a fatal blow. After such a huge loss, they will definitely not allow Mo Xie to live, and they won't use the same lineup as before. The danger in this is too great. But this also proves that Mo Xie is still safe in the Tian Fa forest. They don't dare to go in, so they resorted to such underhanded methods. I didn't expect the three holy lands to be so despicable and shameless. The old lady of Dongfang's face was gloomy. So, the more they force us, the more we can't ask for help from Tian Fa. Remember, in the Dongfang family, if I hear such words again, I will immediately drive them out of the family, without mercy. Yes. Then, Mother, what about these orders? No matter what, we need to have a countermeasure. Dongfang Wenqing asked. Since the orders have been accepted, they will definitely not allow a refund. What we need to do now is to inform them that the price they gave is unreasonable. Make an issue out of the price. The old lady of Dongfang smiled wisely. All the missions are not allowed to be carried out without permission. Then, inform all the contacts that from now on, they're not allowed to accept new orders. Also, for those orders that had already been accepted, the original price would be tripled. Let them negotiate carefully, the longer the better. If there is anyone who doesn't agree to the price increase, immediately cancel the order. Mother's brilliant plan. Dongfang Wenjian's eyes lit up. Brilliant plan? It's just a temporary expedient. This plan might not have much of an effect. At most, it could only buy a little more time to turn the situation around. If I'm not wrong, all the people who release the information will choose to accept the price increase we proposed. The old lady of Dongfang furrowed her brows and said, So, we don't have much time, and the reputation of the Dongfang family cannot be tarnished in my hands. So, we can only take one step at a time. Once the orders are confirmed, we will still have to take action. You must be prepared for this. That's not a problem. What we lack the most now is time to switch. As long as we have enough time, we may be able to accept those orders. And if we can accept all these orders, not only will our Dongfang family regain its former glory, we will also be able to create a more splendid glory. With this brilliant plan of Dongfang, the old lady of Dongfang, as the foundation, Dongfang Wenqing was obviously more optimistic about the future development. Don't be blindly optimistic because of a temporary success. The situation in front of us is absolutely unfavorable. The three Holy Lands are not that easy to deal with. Do the three of you know what I'm most afraid of now? The old lady of Dongfang's face was solemn, and she seemed to be a little worried. Well, Mother, do you have any other concerns? As long as we have enough time to turn the situation around, with the strength of our Dongfang family, we will be able to solve those missions no matter what. At worst, we could just gather our superior forces to solve it. Dongfang Wenjian asked in surprise. What I'm most worried about now is that those clients will really agree to take back the orders or only keep a small portion of the orders. Then, the situation will become really serious. The old lady said, "That's impossible. If they take back the orders or only keep a small portion of the orders, it will be very beneficial to us. Why would the situation become serious instead?" Dongfang Wenjian was obviously even more confused. On the contrary, the old lady of Dongfang Wenqing had a solemn and thoughtful look on her face. Obviously, she had thought of something. Idiot, if the situation really develops into that situation, it means that the three Holy Lands and Mo Xie will really shed all pretense of cordiality. Let me give you the simplest example. We receive a target with a sky-high price, and the target's strength is very low. However, there's a Holy Land powerhouse hidden by his side that we can't deal with. Think about it. What will happen next? The old lady said hatefully, "Do you really think that the three Holy Lands won't do such a thing? If the target's strength exceeds the scope of the information provided by the client, the responsibility is not on us." We have a lot of reasons to say that. Dongfang Wenjian said, "What do you mean by exceeding the scope of the information provided? Who made the rule that the person who helps the target must be the target's subordinate? Guests, high officials, they're all included. And the three Holy Lands have people like that. Can't you even understand this point? If that's the case, it's equivalent to a deadly trap waiting for us to fall into." Dongfang Wenqing let out a long sigh and said, "Mother, you're right. We really have to guard against this. If that's the case, we could just give up on a mission." Dongfang Wenjian said angrily, "We know it's a trap. Do we still have to step into it? Give up? We can indeed give up, but that's a sky-high price. Once we give up, we will have to pay several times the compensation. We may be able to afford one mission, but what about 10? 100? What should we do? What about the Dongfang family? How can the Dongfang family afford it now? If that's the case, then we're really done for. Since we can do that, why don't the three Holy Lands do it directly?" The second master of Dongfang understood the gravity of the situation and could not help but be cautious. Chapter 796. The old lady said slowly, "The three Holy Lands still want face, but this face will not be preserved for long. Sooner or later, this kind of assumption of ours will appear. So, we have to be very careful when we choose our missions. Take the orders from those few supreme martial artists as an example. It's obviously beyond our capabilities. So, we could just use this reason to reject those orders." The old lady said, "The targets of negotiation start from the lowest level, then concentrate our strength to attack those with higher levels of Xianqi." A sharp light flashed in the old lady's eyes. This time, they want to force us. But isn't this a good opportunity for our Dongfang family to grow stronger? As the saying goes, seeking riches comes with risks. Everything has its pros and cons. A crisis may not necessarily be unable to turn into an opportunity. That kind of business that is guaranteed to be profitable is also the most difficult to produce profits. And this kind of crisis, where danger lurks everywhere, is the best opportunity to open up the situation. Since we want to create glory again, how can we not go through trials and tribulations? Even if we perish again, what's there to be afraid of? Mother is right. The three holy lands want to use this kind of method to force us and also force Mo to appear. But why can't we let them try to steal a chicken and come home shorn? Right now, we're using the small to fight against the big. If we lose, no one will laugh at us. But if we really win, then it'll be really glorious. Dongfang Wenqing smiled and said in agreement, looking at her three sons walking out. The smug look on the old lady of Dongfang's face disappeared without a trace. Instead, it was replaced by a thick layer of worry. She murmured, using the small to fight against the big? It's really using the small to fight against the big. If we can get through this, then everything will be fine. And the Dongfang family will also stand tall because of this, and no one will be able to shake its foundation. But even if that's the case, this time, the Dongfang family's trial is truly difficult to overcome. Duanmu, Sikong, Blizzard Silver City, and the Dongfang family were all feeling very sad and sullen. But the people from the three holy lands were even more sullen to the extreme. At the very least, they were 10,000 times sullen. Previously, they had split into two groups. One group had combined the strength of the three families and sent 600 experts to Blizzard Silver City to ambush Jun Moxie, Mei Xuan, and the Xian beasts of Tian Fa. However, they had all been wiped out. Even the number one expert on that path, the King of Hermitage, Missouri Wudao's younger brother, Imo Xiao Yao, did not survive. Such a result, such a huge loss, was undoubtedly something that no one had expected. The moment he received the grievous news, Imo Wudao, the master of Hermitage who had always been elegant and steady, and whose expression would not change even if a mountain collapsed in front of him, vomited blood on the spot and passed out. Imo Xiao Yao was Imo Wudao's only relative, and the two brothers had depended on each other for more than 400 years. How deep was their relationship? Now that such a grievous news had arrived, how could Imo Wudao not feel his heart and soul shatter? When the master of the Immortal Palace regained consciousness, he immediately wanted to send out his troops to flatten the Jun family, Sikong, Duanfang family, and the other large families. However, he was stopped by the Saint King and other seniors in the Immortal Palace. No matter what kind of losses the three holy lands had suffered, it was still unjustifiable for them to lay their hands on a secular family. Furthermore, there were 9 saints in Tianxiang. This force was enough to shake the heavens and earth. After his decision was stopped, Imo Wudao changed his tune and requested to change the original plan. He wanted the 9 saints to kill Mei Xuan and Jun Moxie to take revenge for his brother. This suggestion received unanimous approval. No matter what, Imo Wudao's identity was still the master of Hermitage. If his suggestions were rejected time and time again, then there would be no meaning for him to be the master. How would he be able to convince the masses? That was why the 9 saints besieged Mei Xuan. However, what the Saint Kings did not expect was that Mei Xuan had indeed disappeared because of the 9 saints' attacks. Or rather, her soul had been destroyed. However, her final attack had forcefully dragged the 3 saints of the illusory blood sea to the grave with her. This was a huge loss that could not be made up for. The Lord of the illusory blood sea, Huyen Albua, was enraged. Faced with the rage of the illusory blood sea, Hermitage and the great golden city were secretly gloating. This was because the saints on his side were all fine. At most, they had suffered some minor injuries, which was not a big deal. However, the illusory blood sea had lost 3 saints. In the future, they would definitely be the weakest in the competition between the 3 holy lands. There was no doubt about this outcome. Therefore, the 3 holy lands calmed themselves down and quietly waited for news from the other 6 saints. However, there was no news for a long time. This inevitably made them anxious. Weren't the saints a little too sloppy? Mei Xuan was already finished. How could a mere Jun Moxie stir up a storm? As they waited anxiously, the remaining members of the 3 holy lands were stationed in Tianxiang finally sent back news. The other 6 saints had disappeared without a trace, and the entire June family had already moved out of the capital of Tianxiang. Those saints did not stay with the rest of the people. Instead, they were sent far away. Therefore, these people did not know that something had happened to them. With no news from the 6 saints for a long time, the 3 Holy Lands finally could not wait any longer and went to investigate. At this time, they realized that an extremely shocking battle had taken place south of Tianxiang City. The situation was like a landslide. The river flowed backward. After that battle, the June family did not suffer any casualties. On the second day after that battle, the entire June family moved to the Tianfa forest. It had been a full 10 days since the people from the 3 Holy Lands came to investigate. The 6 saints had disappeared without a trace. Reckless idiots. After another few days, the experts from the 3 Holy Lands who were stationed at the peak of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains all year round sent back news. The demon pupil saint, Lung Tong, had come to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains dispiritedly. He said that he wanted to live in seclusion and quietly wait for the war for seizing the heavens. Only then did the leaders of the 3 Holy Lands know that apart from the demon pupil saint, Lung Tong, the other saints had all died. All of them had died in the hands of June Moxie's master. This was a shocking news that could shatter the heavens and split the earth. When they heard this news, the leaders of the 3 Holy Lands almost thought that the sky had collapsed. June Moxie's master had fought 1 against 5, and the result was that all 5 saints had died. No one knew what Lung Tong had said. In any case, all the crimes had been placed on June Moxie's master. Lung Tong had kept his promise and kept June Moxie's secret, but it also expressed that he was dispirited and was unwilling to return to the Holy Lands. He would rather stay at the Pillar of Heaven's mountains and wait for the war for seizing the heavens. Along with the letter, there was also a sentence from Lung Tong. It was only 4 sentences, but each one was heart-wrenching. When Mo Wu Dao saw these few sentences, he gave up on the idea of letting Lung Tong return to the Holy Lands. And he completely erased these few sentences, not revealing them to the public. But many of the saints who had already seen it were asking themselves this question. These few sentences were like a morning bell, striking into the hearts and souls of everyone. What crime did Tian Fa commit? Is it worth it to be so oppressed? Could the war for seizing the heavens be the source of all evil? Is the safety of the continent an excuse? When have you ever cared about the lives of the world? But Mo Wu Dao did not take these words to heart, because the only thing on his mind right now was revenge. Revenge for his own brother Mo Xiao Yao. A blood feud that could not live under the same sky. Blizzard Silver City still had 600 dead souls. This hatred was also irreconcilable. 9 saints, 8 had fallen, and only 1 remained. But he would not return to the Holy Lands. This was a huge setback that the 3 Holy Lands had never experienced in the past 10,000 years. But how were they going to take revenge? June Moxie had already slipped into the Tianfa forest like a slippery eel. A place like the Tianfa forest, even if the senior Holy Emperor was willing to help, he would still be at a disadvantage if he went in alone. Furthermore, from the saint level onwards, although they still belonged to the 3 Holy Lands in name, they were no longer under the control of the sect leaders of the 3 Holy Lands, Mo Wu Dao, Huyan Ao Bo, and the Supreme Golden City Lord Shiruo Chan discussed for a long time. The 3 of them each had their own plans. Huyan Ao Bo's suggestion was, capture all the people from the Dongfang family, Blizzard Silver City, Sikong family, and Duanmu family, or kill them all. This would definitely lure June Moxie out. However, the other 2 didn't agree with this crazy suggestion. If they really did it, the Holy Emperor Palace would not let them off. Using a power far beyond the mortal world to slaughter the people of the mortal world, this kind of inhumane thing was better not to do. Mo Wu Dao put forward another suggestion. With the current situation of the big families, they did not use force at all. Instead, they used open schemes to kill people. If they forced the 4 families into a corner, he did not believe that they would not look for June Moxie. Moreover, this was a series of schemes with endless backups. As long as these families were still in this world, the three Holy Lands would have endless methods to continue this conspiracy. As long as June Moxie left the Tian Fa forest, everything would be fine. But Shi Ruo Chun had other plans. But in this situation where it was 2 against 1, he agreed with Mo Wudao's suggestion, which was a gentler method, even though he still felt wronged and unbalanced in his heart. But the main culprits were June Moxie and his master. It had nothing to do with anyone else. The only thing that could comfort the three leaders was that Venerable Mei was dead. Also, June Moxie's master fought against 5 saints. Although all 5 saints died in the end, they believed that June Moxie's master did not have it easy either. There might be people in this world who could win against 5 saints, but it was impossible without paying a price. If June Moxie's master could really kill 5 saints without suffering any injuries, then why would the June family need to run? Therefore, this was simply a matter of fact. So the 3 families were waiting for June Moxie to show himself. Because the Holy Emperor Palace had promised that once June Moxie left the Tian Fa forest and appeared in the world again, the 3 Holy Lands would allow the saints to kill him. If June Moxie's master also appeared, they could even send out many Saint King level experts. Chapter 797. But contrary to everyone's expectations, even though the Sikong and Duanmu families had fallen into an awkward situation where they could not make ends meet, they still held on with all their might, and did not have the slightest intention of asking for help from June Moxie. On the other hand, the Silver Blizzard City had sent all of their people back to the city. Blizzard Silver City was currently in the midst of reconstruction, and sending so many people back at once was a burden, but at the same time, it also increased the labor force. So Blizzard Silver City did not have any abnormalities. The Dongfang family had clearly been forced to the end of their tether. But this family was even more stubborn and would rather die than inform June Moxie. This series of unexpected changes made the 3 Holy Lands a little anxious, especially Mo Wudao. Looks like they were still too lenient. Mo Wudao was just about to give the order to proceed with the next step of the operation, but something happened. Because at this time, the Holy Emperor Palace unexpectedly received an emergency summon from the Misty Mansion. Immediately send Saint Kings and Holy Emperor-level experts to the Tian Fa forest and cooperate with the experts from the Misty Mansion to stop the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters from breaking the seal. Just as the 4 Saint Kings and 2 Holy Emperors of Hermitage were about to leave, Mo Wudao stopped one of the Holy Emperor. Senior Jean, this junior would like to ask you for a favor on this trip to the Tian Fa forest. Mo Wudao's expression and voice were both very respectful. What is it? This Senior Jean, who was in a hurry to leave, stopped. Senior, you will definitely see that little thief June Moxie when you go to Tian Fa. Mo Wudao smiled and said, I hope Senior can help me pass a message. Dongfang, Duanmu, Sikong Silver City is finished. Dongfang, Duanmu, Sikong Silver City is finished? Just this one sentence? Yes. All right. I'll remember it. I'll definitely help Sect Master pass on the message. That Senior Jean flashed up and disappeared under the blue sky and white clouds in the blink of an eye. Mo Wudao's white robe fluttered in the wind as he gazed at the empty horizon. He suddenly smiled and said, June Moxie, even if you little thief crawled into a mouse hole, I will make you crawl out obediently to receive your death. After killing my younger brother, you actually want to be a coward and drag out an ignoble existence? There's no such thing as a bargain in this world. I, Mo Wudao, want to let you know that there are some people in this world that you can't afford to offend. There are some troubles that you can't make up for even if you sacrifice your entire family's lives. June Moxie exerted the yin-yang escape art with all his might. When he was about 400 to 500 feet down, he could already feel that the effect of the mist in the Misty Mansion had weakened. Using the yin-yang escape art, he could feel that he had already broken free from the restrictions of the mist and could move about freely underground. Looks like the mist in the Misty Mansion is of a much lower level than the 9 Nether First Young Master's restriction on the Snow Mountain. No, there's no room for comparison between the two. Jun Moxie thought to himself. With a flash, he traversed quickly underground. When he had traversed several hundred feet, he suddenly felt a strange, obscure ripple in front of him. And the further he went, the harder it felt. It was as if the soil and rocks here had all turned into steel. Looks like this is the restriction that the misty, illusory manor set up. Jun Moxie stopped and furrowed his brows slightly. Or perhaps this is the exit to the 9 Nethers? Just at this moment, right in front of Jun Moxie, a loud roar suddenly rang out. This roar was like the eruption of a volcano, surging out. Facing this sudden and unexpected roar, Jun Moxie only felt a roar in his head. The power of the 5th level of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune protected his entire body, but it could not withstand the attack of this horrifying sound wave. Instantly, he felt dizzy. After a long while, he finally regained his senses. All he saw was that the soil around him was trembling violently. This legendary 9 Serenities and 14 Masters is indeed very strong. No wonder he's a legendary character. Jun Moxie could not help but be shocked. Jun Moxie could clearly hear the unwillingness and anger contained in that roar just now, and a kind of untamed arrogance. He was already so close to the legendary character, but Jun Moxie suddenly hesitated. What if he doesn't appreciate it after coming out? Then what? The matter of releasing the 9 Nether 14th Young Master was a double-edged sword. If he was not careful, he might hurt both himself and others. He might even hurt himself first before hurting others. Those bastards from the 3 Holy Lands may be despicable, but the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters was obviously a peerless demon who would not bow down to anyone. He had never hurt a normal person before, but that did not mean that he would not hurt a normal person now, or ever. At the same time, not everyone knew how to repay a debt of gratitude. There were many cases of people attacking their benefactors after being rescued, and it was not uncommon. Jun Moxie had to be on guard. Who could say that this 9 Serenities and 14 Masters was not an ingrate? Jun Moxie calculated silently. He deduced bit by bit from the 9 Nether First Young Master's letter, as well as the past of the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters that Mei Shuyan had mentioned. If this 9 Serenities and 14 Masters really came out, he would undoubtedly be a huge threat to the Misty Mansion and the 3 Holy Lands. But this lunatic wanted to be the sole ruler. That meant that the Tian Fa Forest was also one of the targets that he wanted to conquer. This is very troublesome. Jun Mo, Xia, stood there in silence. He couldn't make up his mind, because if this lunatic really wanted to conquer the Tian Fa Forest, the threat level would definitely be much scarier than the 3 Holy Lands. This fellow was not only a lunatic, but also a proud lunatic. At the same time, he was also an unreasonable lunatic. If this lunatic really did not appreciate his kindness, and even turned on him, he would definitely not be this lunatic's opponent right now. Just as Jun Moxie was in a dilemma, Long Crane's words suddenly rang in his mind. When the illusory phoenix appears, the seal is broken. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. Anyway, whether I am here or not, the seal is broken. I might as well take this opportunity to be a good person and do him a favor. It would be best if it worked. Even if it didn't, with my yin-yang escape technique, I would not be in danger. At most, I would just lure him away. Thinking of this, Jun Dashao, who had finally found a reasonable reason, finally sped up his movements. Instead, he felt a little anxious in his heart. I must be fast. I must rush over before that lunatic breaks through. Otherwise, if that lunatic breaks through the seal before I arrive, wouldn't I have made a wasted trip? Even with the support of the yin-yang escape technique, with the help of the primordial purple chi, Jun Moxie still had to expend a lot of effort before he finally drilled a small hole in this damn place. Then, he flew in with a whooshing sound. IF*CK. Jun Moxie, who had just entered, suddenly could not help but curse in a low voice. Why is it so cold? It's too cold. Even my soul is about to be frozen. As expected, this seemed to be a narrow passageway. It was dark, and nobody knew where it led to. The temperature inside was several times colder than the top of the snowy mountain. The whistling cold wind was like a sharp knife, blowing out with a gloomy and terrifying atmosphere. Knife! Just as June Moxie thought of this, he was shocked to find that the cold wind had suddenly increased. Moreover, the cold glint flashing in the cold wind was actually a sharp saber. They were narrow and small, but they were indestructible. As the sound of the wind gradually became louder, the knives became more and more concentrated and more urgent. In the end, whether it was the sound of the wind or the sound of the knives breaking through the air, it already had a kind of earth-shattering movement similar to the roar of thunder. June Moxie could not help but be shocked. This damned weather. To think that the 9 serenities and 14 masters could actually hold back in here for so many years. Suddenly, F***CK? What the hell is going on? Why did the damn 9 serenities cold wind and 9 serenities cold knife suddenly become so much bigger? Who the hell did this? Is there another little guy coming over from there? But this young master is not dead yet. How can anyone come over? Following a gloomy roar, June Moxie clearly saw a ghost-like figure flying over from the other side. The sharp knives clanged against his body and actually caused the sound of metal clashing, and sparks flew in all directions. As if he did not feel anything, he quickly flew over and disappeared in front of June Moxie in the blink of an eye. He rushed towards the direction where the 9 serenities cold wind was blowing from, as fast as lightning. June Moxie wiped off his cold sweat. So strong. Even a saint-level expert would not dare to not dodge or block such a concentrated attack. But this fellow actually dashed forward as if nothing had happened. A sound came from the ground, and June Moxie looked over and took another breath of cold air. The 9 serenities cold knife that had fallen on the ground were swept up by the wind. He grabbed one of the knives in his hand and was shocked to find that the knife's edge had been bent. This was a super strong metal that did not belong to this world. June Moxie estimated that the sharpness and hardness of the 9 serenities cold knife was almost comparable to the strength of an ordinary knife that he had tempered with the power of gold. If it was in the Xian continent, any 9 serenities cold knife could be regarded as an indisputable divine weapon. What was even rarer was that it could be so light as if it was weightless. Such a sharp divine weapon. When pierced into that person's body, it was the divine weapon's edge that was bent. This person's body was too hard. This person must be the legendary 9 serenities and 14 masters. Come to think of it, there seemed to be no one else here other than this lunatic. However, this knife, although it could not hurt the 9 serenities and 14 masters, could it not hurt others? This is a real treasure. Moreover, I can use the power of gold to further temper it, and its power will definitely increase to another level. This knife's texture is special, and its weight is so light. As long as I put some effort into tempering it, there will definitely be gratifying results. At the very least, it will be better than the previous knives and swords. Especially with so many materials here, it's a good thing like a meat pie falling from the sky. June Moxie was overjoyed at the sight of the 9 nether frost sabers. Both his hands moved with the wind, collecting the 9 nether frost sabers along the way, some on the ground, some in the air, and some that were stuck to the walls. The further he went with the wind, the more these things he found. Every knife was only as thick as a chopstick, and they were thin and flashing with a cold light. While he held them in his hands, a bone-chilling feeling rose up. Tomorrow is the little new year. Today I went out for a shopping spree and bought a few gifts for each of my parents. I'm going to send them home early tomorrow morning. There's food, necessities, and clothes. So many years of living in poverty, and I can't lift my head up. This year, I'll let my parents have a good time. I remember 2 years ago, my mom said, "Sai, if you can earn $2,000 every month, your dad and I will be relieved." During the spring festival of 2009, my mom accompanied me in a hospital and said, "I don't want to earn much money. As long as we can live together healthily every year from now on, I don't want anything else. If we're poor, then let's be poor. The old people's wishes were so simple, and they were within reach. But at that difficult time, it was an extravagant wish. I borrowed money from all my relatives and friends, but I still couldn't borrow $1,000 for medical expenses. My parents have been blaming themselves until now. They said that the pain in my legs every winter was caused by their lack of ability and money and delayed treatment. When something happened to my son, I don't know how many grievances and supercilious looks my parents suffered, how many hearts were hurt, and how many tears they shed. Now, with the support of my brothers and sisters, I can finally support myself, and I can be considered to have a little ability. So, every day from now on, I will let my parents live comfortably. He was very happy. Let them feel that they didn't raise this son in vain. This can be considered as my vow. I'll say it here, with millions of brothers and sisters as my witness. The day before yesterday, I worked overtime until 4 o'clock. When I encountered a small bottleneck, I went to chat in the group. I suddenly felt very touched. I suddenly realized that my brothers and sisters are so cute. You can be said to be my benefactors. Under the situation where piracy is rampant, I can read books without spending money, but my brothers and sisters have sacrificed so much for me. It can be said that without these thousands of subscribed brothers and sisters, there would be no Phone Ling and no Evil Prince. I wouldn't have achieved what I have today, or rather, without you, I might not even be able to filial piety to my parents. Please allow me to say to my 7,000 subscribed brothers and sisters before the arrival of the little new year, thank you. The hardships of life let me know how hard it is to earn money. He also understood that it was even more difficult to resist piracy and insist on paying for it. So my thanks are sincere. Thank you, my brothers and sisters. I wish you a happy life. The little new year is coming. I wish you all happiness in advance. If there's no explosion, I won't write a single blessing chapter. In short, thank you very much. I'm not asking for votes. I'm only saying this to thank you. I have nothing to repay you with. I can only stick to my own path and write stories for you for a few more years so that my brothers and sisters can smile and relax after their busy work. Above. Chapter 798. Mei Shuiyan was cultivating in the Hongjun Pagoda when she suddenly heard a dang, dang, dang sound. When she opened her eyes, she could only see many long and strange knives falling from the sky. It was like hailstones, and after a short while, there was a huge pile of knives, and more were still falling. Carefully moving closer to take a look, Mei Shuiyan was stunned, and a thought popped up in her mind. Could this be the legendary 9 Netherfrost Blade? If it really is the legendary 9 Netherfrost Blade, where is Mo now? The 9 Netherfrost Blade was the signature weapon of the 9 Nether Young Masters. It was said that every 9 Nether Young Master who appeared in the Xian continent had an inexhaustible supply of 9 Netherfrost Blades. In the Xian continent, this kind of godly weapon could be said to be the ultimate godly weapon. Furthermore, they would never allow the 9 Netherfrost Blade to be lost. Even if it was broken, they would still carefully retrieve it. Although Mei Shuiyan had never seen it in person, she had heard of it a long time ago. Now that she saw this strange weapon that was as cold as the eyes of a demon, she naturally recognized it with a single glance. Could it be that Mo has gone to the forbidden land of Tian Fa? Mei Shuiyan could not help but worry. Jun Moxie collected as he walked, and not long after, he felt as if he had collected thousands of these strange knives. And there were still so many of them in front of him, and there were still people coming from behind. The further he walked, the wider the area became. On the walls of the cave, there were also faint traces of mottled marks. Presumably, this was where the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters had been venting their frustrations all these years. From the inside, one could tell that the quality of the walls of the cave was at the level of indestructible. Jun Moxie even tried to use the blood of Yellow Flame to stab it, but even after using all his strength, he could only leave a shallow mark. What kind of material is this? Why is it so hard? No wonder this fellow can't get out. June Moxie finally understood. There was a faint, strange light in front of him. June Moxie took a step forward, only to find that this place was already a very strange cave. On the top of the cave, there was a layer of colorful things, emitting endless majesty. It seemed indestructible and was filled with a mysterious power. June Moxie found it vaguely familiar. After carefully observing it for a while, he finally couldn't help but laugh. This is simply a formation, and it was a variant of the Nine Nether First Young Master's miraculous barrier. Although the effect was far from being comparable to the Nine Nether First Young Master's personal arrangement, the power was still rather impressive. Who would have thought that the Misty and Misty Mansion would use the Nine Nether First Young Master's method to deal with the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters? Isn't this really hilarious? Could this be counted as the 9 Nether Young Masters lifting a rock only to smash their own feet? The cave was filled with 9 nether frost blades, arranged in piles and piles. With a rough look, there should be at least hundreds of thousands of them. They should have been accumulated over the years. From the looks of it, this 9 Serenities and 14 Masters didn't seem to care much about these things. June Moxie's eyes turned, and with a thought, he had already silently kept almost half of them. He thought to himself, since the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters can't use so many, I might as well let them benefit me. I have great use for them. But June Moxie still kept an eye out and tried to take some from every pile. As for those hidden in the dark corners, he took a little more. Just as he kept them, June Moxie felt the 9 nether frost wind suddenly become stronger. Then a black figure flew out with a swoosh, cursing. What a strange thing. There's no situation at all. Why is it so abnormal? This young master has made a wasted trip. But this person who called himself Young Master didn't seem to have anything to do with Young Master. This person's long hair was messy and draped over his head. His face was so dark that it was impossible to see what he looked like. However, his eyes were extremely bright. His whole body was tattered, and he was in such a miserable state that even the most miserable beggar in the world would feel comforted when he saw him. So there's someone even more miserable than me. When he walked into the cave, he raised his sinister eyes and looked at the 5-colored light above his head. He said fiercely, I want to see how long this broken thing can stop me. As he spoke, he was about to fly up. This guy actually didn't notice June Moxie's presence at all. This made June Moxie feel much more confident. It seemed that his Yin-Yang escape was really heaven-defying. However, June Moxie didn't dare to let him continue to attack crazily. Not to mention anything else, he was standing so close to him. It was hard to guarantee that he wouldn't faint from the shock. Just the shock alone was enough to deafen him. That roar alone might even deafen him. 9 Serenities and 14 Masters was just about to jump up when he suddenly heard a gloomy voice beside him. 9 Serenities and 14 Masters? Why are you still attacking? You've been attacking for hundreds of years. Aren't you tired? Who's there? Come out. Come out for this young master. The 9 Nether 14th young master's hair stood on end. He even felt that his heart had suddenly stopped beating. His eyes flashed with a cold light, as if they were about to pop out of their sockets. It had been more than 300 years, a total of 375 years. He had stayed here alone. Not to mention humans. He hadn't even seen an ant or an earthworm. Loneliness had become a habit, and loneliness had become a pastime. 9 Serenities and 14 Masters had long given up hope. He knew that no matter what, there wouldn't be a second person here. But now, there was someone else's voice beside him. Although the voice wasn't loud, for 9 Serenities and 14 Masters, it was like thunder exploding in his ears on a sunny day. With a swoosh, 9 Serenities and 14 Masters' body turned into a mass of shadows, from near to far, and from far to near. In an instant, the entire cave was filled with the shadows of 9 Serenities and 14 Masters. All of the shadows seemed to have materialized. It was as if thousands of 9 Serenities and 14 Masters had lined up in this cave. June Moxie's entire body was drenched in cold sweat. This lightness kung fu was like a child eating candy, chewing it. Amazing. Of all the masters that Jun Moxie had seen, none of them could match the speed of 9 serenities and 14 masters in front of him. Even he and Mei Shuiyan couldn't reach this level. This amazing speed, in Jun Moxie's eyes, seemed to be close to the speed of light. It was too fast. Come out. Who dares to play tricks on this young master? 9 serenities and 14 masters' eyes flickered, paying attention to every corner. He looked around carefully, gritting his teeth and shouting, "If you don't come out, I won't be so polite if I drag you out. You can't even find me, and you still want to drag me out? You're talking big. Who are you trying to fool?" Jun Moxie cursed in his heart. He pinched his nose and said, "9 serenities and 14 masters, you're indeed an almighty who can lie without blushing. I admire you. I like to see how you're going to drag me out. Do you even believe what you're saying?" Freeze! 9 serenities and 14 masters was so agitated by this sentence that his messy hair danced in the air. Suddenly, he shook his arms, and a few feet of black light shot out from his eyes. His entire body exuded a shocking aura, and he let out a low roar. After he said this, Jun Moxie suddenly felt that the entire space in the cave seemed to have become solid with that roar. The entire space had turned into a huge crystal ball, space freezing. The 9 Nether First Young Master actually had such an earth-shattering skill. This was not something that Mei Shuiyan's Heaven and Earth Cage could compare to. The Heaven and Earth Cage only used the power of Heaven and Earth to seal a small area of space. But this move of 9 serenities and 14 masters directly sealed the power of Heaven and Earth, turning this space into a dead object. But although this power was strange and overbearing, it still could not affect Jun Dashao, who was in the state of yin-yang escape. Although Jun Moxie felt that something was amiss, he could clearly feel the dead silence in the surrounding space. But as long as he did not move, 9 serenities and 14 masters would definitely not be able to discover him. Even so, but Jun Moxie was still sealed in a certain space. This was the first time Jun Moxie had seen someone who could restrict his yin-yang escape. Although this person did not realize it, still not coming out? If you don't come out, this young master's next move will break it. 9 serenities and 14 masters said sinisterly, to be able to become invisible in front of this young master. What a great skill. But at your level, you should know what breaking the void is, right? He paused, as if giving the person in the dark time to consider. After a pause, he continued, "Since this young master can seal space and turn it into a dead object, then breaking space is not a difficult thing for me. Are you really not willing to come out? Then don't regret it. Once this space is broken, it will immediately turn into fragments. If you don't come out, this young master will immediately break this space and completely annihilate you." The person in the dark still did not say a word. 9 serenities and 14 masters waited patiently, the corners of his mouth curling into a smile that said everything was under control. He concluded that the person in the dark would definitely accept his threat, because since ancient times, no one had ever survived the breaking of space. The person in the dark might be very powerful, but as long as he made a sound, he was still a human. As long as he was a human, he could not escape this move. However, even he would not easily use this move. Breaking the void consumed a lot of energy. Seeing that he would be able to break the seal after a few more attacks, he did not want to waste his energy at this time. Once he used that move regardless of the consequences, the day of his escape would be greatly delayed. After a long time, 9 serenities and 14 masters did not move, and the person in the dark did not move either. After a long while, the 9 Nether 14th young master also felt strange. Could it be that that person was still able to leave under such circumstances? That's impossible. So he asked tentatively, "Are you still there?" Chapter 799. The voice was still gloomy and illusory, and it circled around the entire stone room. It was impossible to tell where it came from. The voice did not seem to be loud, but the surprise in it was like a slap to the face of 9 serenities and 14 masters. 9 serenities and 14 masters suddenly felt a burning sensation on his face. He had been waiting for the other party to beg for mercy, but he did not expect to be fooled by the other party. This kind of thing could not be tolerated by anyone, not to mention the 9 nether 14th young master who had always had his eyes on the top of his head. If he could not even deal with this person, how could he talk about being the supreme ruler of the world? 9 serenities and 14 masters was completely enraged. Break! This time, the 9 nether 14th young master roared furiously. With that roar, the 9 nether 14th young master's body suddenly emitted a ball of black light that was almost solid. A black light that was even darker than the night sky. His head of messy hair also stood on end, fluttering in the air. It was like the water plants swaying with the waves at the bottom of the sea, or a large group of ferocious snakes on the ground that had their necks erect and were about to devour someone. His eyes seemed to have lost all their original color, leaving only a deep and unfathomable darkness like a black hole in the universe. At the same time, the black gas instantly filled the air. 9 serenities and 14 masters shook his arms and pressed his hands down. An unprecedentedly violent hurricane instantly rose from the bottom of his hands. He was clearly pouncing down with his palms facing down, but the hurricane actually swept up from the bottom up. Crack, crack, crack. June Moxie could clearly hear the strange sound of space shattering. It was like a delicate piece of porcelain that was gently knocked by someone. First, there were fine cracks. Then the fine cracks gradually spread to the whole porcelain, and it broke little by little. Finally, it completely collapsed. June Moxie could see every single detail of the process, and every single detail of the process clearly. He didn't see it with his eyes, but he really felt that he saw it. It was a strange feeling that made one's hair stand on end. The entire space had truly shattered. In the blink of an eye, the entire cave had become a black hole that could devour everything, completely isolated from the world. It was as if this shattered space didn't exist in this world at all. Instead, it was a space from another world that was forcefully moved here. Everything seemed so out of place. However, June Moxie, who was in the yin-yang escape state, was still safe and sound. Shattering the void, it could indeed destroy everything and turn everything into nothingness. And the only thing that couldn't be destroyed seemed to be nothingness itself. June Moxie heaved a sigh of relief, but at the same time, he couldn't help but feel shocked. Is this the legendary void-breaking realm? If even space could be destroyed, then what else couldn't be destroyed? 9 serenities and 14 masters was indeed a legendary figure that made the 3 holy lands and the misty mansion restless. He seemed to be able to use such an earth-shattering power effortlessly. 9 serenities and 14 masters heaved a sigh of relief and suddenly felt a little regretful. He felt that his impulsive actions just now were not worth it. Not only had he used up his cultivation and greatly damaged his vitality, but he had also not spoken to anyone for hundreds of years since he was sealed in this place. Now that someone had finally come, he actually angered him with just a few words, and then he directly shattered him. Under the shattering of the space, even if he was in his soul form, he would definitely not be able to survive. No matter how good this person's concealment technique was, he was still a living person. How could he avoid such a sure kill technique? 9 serenities and 14 masters sighed. He felt that he had used up about 1/3 of his strength with that blow just now, and he couldn't help but feel a wave of regret. He muttered angrily, "What an arrogant bastard. Do you think this void-breaking realm is fun? You've caused me to lose a lot of vitality. For the sake of such an ignorant scoundrel, this young master's escape has been delayed for many more days. He truly deserves to die." As soon as he finished speaking, a voice suddenly asked curiously in the silence, "Is this the so-called void-breaking realm? It's really powerful. I almost got hurt. Before this, I really didn't think that there would be such an amazing technique in this world." 9 serenities and 14 masters You really live up to your name in the Xian realm. 9 serenities and 14 masters only felt the hairs all over his body stand up. This lawless and crazy madman also felt a sense of horror from the bottom of his heart at this moment. Ever since he was born, he had never felt a sense of fear. For the first time, it swept through his heart. That person was still here. He was still alive. How was this possible? But this time, 9 serenities and 14 masters did not launch any more attacks. He took a deep breath and calmed down. With a flick of his tattered sleeves, the shattered space in the air was swept aside with a clang like a piece of solid glass. Then 9 serenities and 14 masters sat down. In this cave, he was sitting in the void of another world. But his existence was still real. He lowered his head and said in a deep voice, "If you're just joking, then you can leave now. I still have serious matters to attend to, and I'm not interested in playing with you. If you're here for something else, why don't you tell me? I'm all ears." With just one sentence, the 9 Nether 14th young master had taken back the initiative. After a short moment of anger, 9 serenities and 14 masters instantly grasped Jun Moxie's weakness. Because since he was here, no matter how heaven-defying his cultivation was, he was here for a reason, and the reason was none other than himself. So, 9 serenities and 14 masters instantly figured this out. It was also because of this that he could say such a thing. No matter what this person's intentions were, he would still negotiate with him. So, all he had to do was wait and see. Although this was not his usual style, there was no way he could not find the specific location of the other party. So even though the 9 Nether 14th young master had regained the initiative, he felt even more depressed in his heart. The famous 9 serenities and 14 masters sat in a space that belonged to this world, but was in another time and space, waiting quietly. He could choose to sit here and wait, but Jun Moxie could not. Jun Moxie had no doubt that once he left the nothingness state of the yin-yang escape, he would immediately be swallowed by this strange space. Or perhaps it would be the beginning of another time travel. But such an outcome was something that Jun Moxie could not accept no matter what. After all, this was a broken space. Who knew what kind of *T would happen? This was a risk that could not be taken. So, Jun Moxie still maintained a state of the nothingness of the yin-yang escape and slowly praised. 9 serenities and 14 masters. Your wisdom is indeed superior. Very extraordinary. 9 serenities and 14 masters snorted but did not make a sound. He did not even lift his eyelids. Jun Moxie looked with interest at this terrifying madman who made the entire Xian continent tremble with fear. This legendary figure, however, found that no matter how he looked, he could not see the face of 9 serenities and 14 masters. Even when 9 serenities and 14 masters raised his head, all he could see was a blur. 9 serenities and 14 masters could actually isolate all the detection from the 6 senses. Or perhaps this was just a special effect of a certain cultivation technique and not deliberate. I am from the Tion FA4 side. Of course, Jun Moxie did not want to wait like this, so he simply went straight to the point and said, "Today, I am here to discuss a deal with 14th young master." 9 serenities and 14 masters sat motionlessly. Not even a strand of his hair moved. He only said lightly, "Go on." Say it all in one breath. He actually had an indifferent and commanding tone. Jun Moxie was not angry, and his tone remained calm as he continued. "The seal here, under your continuous attacks, is getting worse and worse. I believe that in a few days, it will be completely broken, and you will definitely be able to escape, and from then on, you will roam the world like a dragon and roar like a tiger deep in the mountains. But there is one thing that you must guard against. The moment you completely break the seal will also be the day that the magical 9 underworld's passage disappears. You and I both know this very well. Therefore, from the moment you broke the seal, you no longer had a way out. Not a single way out. You can only resist. But I believe that you will also need to pay a huge price to break the seal. Even with 14th Young Master's magical powers, it will not be an easy task. According to my estimation, after breaking the seal, you will at most retain a third of your strength, or even less. Maybe 10 or 20% is about right. That is to say, the moment you break the seal, you will be free, but it will also be the moment when your strength is at its weakest. I believe that you also know that the 3 Holy Lands and the Misty Mansion will not allow you to come out safely. So, there are already at least a dozen Holy King and Holy Emperor level experts waiting for you outside. At this point, Jun Moxie suddenly increased his tone and said in a deep voice, "Everyone here is a smart person, and you also know that I am not exaggerating. The moment you break the seal and escape is the moment when you are most vulnerable to being killed. In the battle that follows, the chances of you being killed are more than 80%. At most, you only have a 20% chance. Or you could say that you have a chance to escape by luck. And even if you manage to escape, you will still have to face endless pursuit. And your remaining strength is not enough to fight against all of this. You will definitely die." Jun Mo Xie said the last sentence in a leisurely manner. Then he stopped talking. Chapter 800. In fact, this was also a major problem that the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters had been aware of for a long time. Everyone was well aware of this fact. Junimo Xie was just being more open about it. That's all. The real important content was what followed after this paragraph. However, Jun Moxie did not continue. He was keeping them in suspense. He could afford to wait, but the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters could not. Although the 9 Nether 14th Young Master had a fiery temper, his wisdom was extraordinary. The wisdom he had accumulated over the years was not to be underestimated. He naturally understood that the seal was about to be undone, and there would definitely be many experts outside. If they were given time to set up or even reinforce the seal, the 9 Nether 14th Young Master would have to stay in here for another few hundred years. This was something he could not tolerate. If he could tolerate it, he wouldn't have spent so much effort to break the seal. You're right. The 9 Serenities and 14 Masters snorted. With a strong sense of unwillingness and depression, he gritted his teeth and said word by word, "You're King, right? But do you think I don't know about this? I knew it clearly hundreds of years ago. What's the use of saying this now?" He was unwilling, because the rhythm of the conversation was seized by Jun Moxie again and again, leading the topic. He had no choice but to answer. For the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters, who had been arrogant all his life and always thought that he was the best in the world, it was a naked humiliation. So he was depressed. He felt a sense of shame that was close to being forced to confess. Because of this strong unwillingness and depression, the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters, who had always regarded himself as a noble and called himself Young Master, actually began to swear. This guy in the dark was really infuriating, although what he said was the truth. But it was also T. You're right. My words are completely useless to fart, but to the arrogant 9 Nether 14th Young Master, they're still of some use. Jun Mo Xie said calmly. If he couldn't completely suppress this fellow, this negotiation wouldn't be able to begin. The original intention had to be set from the beginning. Therefore, after Jun Moxie told the truth, he started to provoke him again. While the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters felt aggrieved and depressed, when had Jun Moxie and Jun Dashao ever been ignored like this? I'm talking to you, but you dare to ignore my existence? So what if you're the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters? I'm the one helping you now, not the other way around. How dare you make me take the initiative to speak when you have a favor to ask? See if I don't play you until you're crippled. The 9 Serenities and 14 Masters' breathing became heavier and more urgent. His chest rose and fell more violently. He had stayed here for hundreds of years. Although he had accumulated more wisdom, he had almost forgotten how to fight against others. Now, the first person he met was a sharp-tongued person who was no less intelligent than him. Moreover, This person was an extreme scoundrel. With June Moxie's words, he could make a dead person jump in his coffin in anger. Moreover, the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters had not interacted with anyone for hundreds of years. The 9 Serenities and 14 Masters felt that he was going to have a cerebral hemorrhage soon. Ah, you mean I'm not as good as a fart? I'm not as good as a fart. The 9 Serenities and 14 Masters suddenly roared. He was full of anger that he couldn't vent. With a whoosh, he rushed out of the strange, broken space and punched the wall of the cave. A punch that gathered all the strength and anger in his body. The power of this punch was truly earth-shattering and earth-shattering. Boom! After a loud explosion, the entire 9 Underworlds passage began to shake. Then, the loud sound spread along the 9 Underworlds passage and turned into intense reverberations that came back again and again. June Moxie's ears were almost deafened by the earthquake. Fortunately, he immediately escaped into the Hongjun Pagoda's space when he saw that the situation was not good. Otherwise, he might have been concussed by this madman. Jun Dashao was dissatisfied. Even if you're not as good as a fart, you don't have to shout so loudly, right? Look at how excited you are. Is this for showing off? What kind of taste does this person have? I'm not as good as a fart. I'm not as good as a fart. A fart. A fart, fart, fart. The 9 Serenities and 14 Masters' voice spread out in an overwhelming manner. Outside, the mist of the misty, illusory manor had completely disappeared without a trace. The 15 to 16 white-robed men and the 8 to 9 burly men in ragged clothes all looked at each other in dismay. Everyone thought in their hearts, could it be that this guy has been in here for hundreds of years? Seeing that he's about to come out again, he's so excited that he's gone crazy? He's not as good as a fart? What does this mean? What's going on? If you're really not as good as a fart, then is it worth us being so serious? If you're not as good as a fart, then what are we? The 9 Nether Young Masters are indeed extraordinary. They really can't be measured by common sense. To think that he could shout out such words in such high spirits, he was too domineering. After a long time, the cave finally quieted down again. The 9 Serenities and 14 Masters had already returned to the broken space. Only the veins on his temples were throbbing. Jun Moxie flashed out of the Hongjun Pagoda at the right time. He coughed and said, Actually, I didn't mean it that way. Please believe me. I'm not saying that you're not as good as a fart. Shut up. The 9 Serenities and 14 Masters' voice was very low, but it was filled with a kind of extreme suppressed mania that was about to explode. If you say another word of nonsense, get lost immediately. I'm not in the mood, and I'm not interested in negotiating with a bastard like you. I'm trying to clarify for you. Why can't you understand what I'm saying? Jun Moxie had just said one sentence when the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters suddenly raised his head. His eyes shot out a crazy black light. He couldn't help but laugh bitterly. All right, let's talk about something serious. The 9 Serenities and 14 Masters slowly clenched his fist, then released it, then clenched it again, and released it again. The sound of bones cracking could be heard. Clearly, the anger in his heart had reached an extreme. Why is he acting like a ruffian on earth? Jun Moxie felt a wave of disdain in his heart, but he still hurriedly continued. Of course, your crisis is not impossible to resolve. As long as you promise me one thing, I will help you reduce the resistance of a seal by at least a third. That way, you can escape more smoothly. Are you interested in this deal? What do you want me to promise? Can you really reduce the power of a seal? The 9 Serenities and 14 Masters' body trembled, but he still did not raise his head. My request is very simple. After we get out, you must not start a battle in the Tian Fa forest. And before you defeat me, you must not deal with Tian Fa Xian beasts, and you must not invade the Tian Fa forest. Jun Moxie said word by word. You can fight the 3 Holy Lands and the Misty Mansion however you want, but the battlefield cannot be in the Tian Fa forest. You must preserve this piece of pure land for the Tian Fa forest. How about it? If you are willing to make a promise, I will destroy that seal and allow you to escape with your life while preserving more of your strength. You will be able to roam freely in Xian. The 9 serenities and 14 masters, he finally raised his head. Before I defeat you? Who are you? Do you think you are very powerful? Jun Moxie sighed helplessly. He really is a lunatic. At this moment, the first thing he considered was not to get out of this place as soon as possible, but to fight with me. What kind of person is this? I may not be very powerful, but at least in this 9 nether passage that you're most familiar with, you can't do anything to me. Even if you use all your treasures, you won't be able to find any trace of me. Isn't my weight enough? In fact, do you really have the confidence to fight me in addition to the experts from the Misty Mansion and the 3 Holy Lands? Jun Moxie said lightly. The 9 serenities and 14 masters was silent for a while, but to Jun Moxie's surprise, he acquiesced to this fact. Leave your name. I want to know your name first. Although he was arrogant, he respected those who were strong enough to threaten him. The mysterious concealment technique that Jun Moxie had displayed earlier was something that the 9 serenities and 14 masters admitted that they could never do. So, although Jun Moxie's words were a little harsh to him, it was an indisputable fact. This concealer was indeed an unfathomable opponent. As long as it was a fact, the 9 nether young masters had never denied it. Although he was very uncomfortable in his heart, the truth was the truth. I don't have a name. Even if I did in the past, I don't remember it now. All these years, the people from the 3 Holy Lands have been fighting with me, but they couldn't do anything to me. Because I often refer to myself with the word master, the people from the 3 Holy Lands have always called me. Jun Moxie paused for a while, and a strange smile appeared on his face. But his voice was still calm and steady. 9 firmament first old master. 9 firmament first old master. The 9 serenities and 14 masters mumbled. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that this name was not pleasing to his ears. Could it be that other than the 9 nether lineage, there were other places with such a strange name? 9 nether? 9 firmaments? 1 earth and 1 sky, diametrically opposed. Was this a coincidence? Or was it deliberately targeted? Earth to sky is one thing, but my side is already extended to the 14th. You're actually number 1. I'm the 14th young master, and you're the first old master? Isn't that obviously taking advantage of me? F*CK. The 9 serenities and 14 masters roared angrily. Which bastard came up with such a filthy name? I can't help it. I only found out later that the reason why the 3 Holy Lands gave me such a nickname was to prepare for the day you came out. Then, just based on our names, we would definitely fight to the death. It's not targeted at you. All the 9 nether young masters, as long as they hear my name, will definitely come into conflict with me. Jun Moxie spoke without thinking and said worriedly, and this sinister intention of the 3 Holy Lands is also one of the reasons why I'm here today. I hope you can understand this point. There's one more thing that needs to be made clear. I have no intention of becoming enemies with you. I don't want to let those hypocrites take advantage of me. It's not that I don't have the guts to become enemies with you, or that I'm incapable of becoming enemies with you. You must understand this point. Chapter 801. The 9 nether 14th young master's tone had actually warmed up a little as he said, I can understand this point, and also agree with it. With your capabilities, if you really want to be my enemy, there's no need for you to really make a move. You just have to delay me here, and let the outside world reinforce the seal. But the despicable methods of these bastards are really despicable. In order to deal with this young master, they actually gave you such a nickname. This is really intolerable. 9 serenities and 14 masters said through gritted teeth. Obviously, the story that Jun Moxie had fabricated about this 9 firmament first old master, coming from the 3 Holy Lands and the Misty Mansion, had angered him. That's right. When 2 tigers fight, one must be injured. The enemy of my enemy. Even if we can't be friends, we shouldn't rashly become enemies. Jun Moxie used a reasonable tone and said solemnly, That's why I've come here today. The promise that you want is not a problem for this young master. The battlefield of the battle is the same no matter where it is. Right now, if you really want to help me, and your request is so ordinary, then this young master will agree to it. 9 serenities and 14 masters said thoughtfully, also, the date of the battle between you and me. After that battle, it won't be too late for me to make plans against Tion Fa. If I can't beat you in the end, even if you don't say it, then this young master will not be so thick-skinned as to lay hands on the juniors of Tion Fa. This 9 serenities and 14 masters' words revealed a strong confidence, as if he had already gone out and become the ruler of the world. Jun Moxie pursed his lips and said confidently, "A gentleman's word is as good as his whip. I can give you a clear deadline. Everyone has the intention to become enemies with the 3 holy lands and the Misty Mansion. Then, when the 3 holy lands and the Misty Mansion are destroyed, it will be the day of our final battle. At that time, everyone will have nothing to worry about and will be able to fight to their heart's content. One more thing, I have to make it clear. I can't really join hands with you to deal with them, because in name, you are the public enemy of the continent. I need you to understand this. You may not care, but I can't." With a bitter smile, Jun Moxie said, "I admit that I'm not as good as you on this point. Haha, that's a small matter. You fight your battles, and I'll fight mine. The 9 serenities and 14 masters, don't need anyone's help to do what I want to do. However, you are too timid. What is there to fear from these people?" As expected, the 9 nether 14th young master felt a wave of comfort in his heart. He laughed arrogantly and said in an extremely disdainful tone, "3 holy lands, misty illusory manner? They are just a bunch of despicable hypocrites. What holy land, Misty Mansion? Bullsh asterisk T. They can't even withstand a single blow. You are straightforward. If that's the case, then our conditions have been met?" Jun Moxie smiled. "That's right. I promise. This young master always keeps his promises. I will not change." The 9 nether 14th young master snorted coldly, a hint of eagerness in his voice. "But you, how are you going to help me break the seal? Are you really confident?" "This seal is easy for me." Jun Moxie pointed at the 5-colored light above his head and said, "In a while, I will use my magical power to get out from the middle. After I get out, there will naturally be a hole in the seal. Haha, as long as there is a small hole, you can save at least 1/3 of your strength when you get out." "It's more than 1/3. The 9 serenities and 14 masters rolled his eyes and waved his hand. "Since it's so easy, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and do it." Jun Moxie chuckled and said, "Then you'll have to look carefully. Where exactly did I go out from?" A black light flashed in the eyes of the 9 serenities and 14 masters. He said in a deep voice, "Don't worry. I know this better than anyone else." Jun Moxie snickered in his heart. Looks like this fellow must have explored every inch of this seal thousands of times in the past few hundred years. He should be very familiar with it by now. As the 9 serenities and 14 masters used his eyesight to watch, he saw a hazy figure flash in the air like a ghost. Then, it floated to the center of the 5-colored seal and stopped moving. Then it slowly and completely disappeared. As for that part of the seal, it was truly undergoing a subtle change. It was as if the power of the seal was diminishing bit by bit, being obliterated. It was undergoing a subtle change every moment. Although it was extremely minute, how familiar was the 9 nether 14th young master with this seal? The sturdiness of the seal had made him suffer a great deal. Jun Moxie was able to change the seal in such a short period of time. Just this one move alone was enough to shock him to the core. Thinking about the place where Jun Moxie had just appeared, the crazy 9 serenities and 14 masters could not help but secretly smack his lips. So this guy's been hiding so close to me. This ability is really amazing, but it doesn't seem that great. It's just an unorthodox method. Your real strength may not be stronger than mine. This sentence was not arrogance or blind confidence. Jun Moxie could hide because he had no hostility, let alone killing intent. As long as he wanted to harm the 9 serenities and 14 masters, he would be able to detect it and react immediately. At this moment, Jun Moxie's gloomy voice suddenly came from the void. "Look carefully. I'm leaving first. You're on your own." Then the air seemed to shake, and the blurry figure completely disappeared. At the same time that the blurry figure disappeared, there seemed to be an extremely soft pop sound, as if a sharp steel needle had gently pierced a balloon on the seal's colorful barrier. A tiny hole that was so tiny that it was almost negligible appeared. It was even finer than a strand of hair. A fresh smell of air came from the outside world. The 9 serenities and 14 masters greedily took 2 breaths. This was the smell that he had not felt for 375 years. Suddenly, his eyes lit up and he laughed wildly. He flew up, his whole body emitting a dazzling black light. With a loud roar, he slammed into the seal like lightning. After hundreds of years, there was finally such a turning point. At this moment, the 9 serenities and 14 masters could not wait any longer. He had even forgotten that he had just used up his strength. He could not wait to get out. There was a loud bang. The world around the seal shook at the same time. The seal's multicolored aperture suddenly bulged up from the center of the small opening. It was this little bit of progress, but it made the 9 serenities and 14 masters excited. He roared again and attacked crazily. Continuous booms resounded in this area. Every hit was like a lightning strike on a volcano. Outside, the mountains were shaking and the earth was shaking. Boulders that weighed thousands of kilograms jumped and fell back to the ground, making loud banging sounds. Countless ancient trees that were tens of millions of years old were shaking violently. Even the thick branches were falling off from the trees due to the vibrations. The entire Tian-Fa forest seemed to have fallen into a frenzy at the same time. It was trembling and shaking. An aura of the end of the world shrouded the hearts of all the mystical beasts. The crashing sounds became more and more intense. There was also a crazy laughter mixed in. All of this meant that a world-destroying demon was about to come out and reappear in the world. The experts from the 3 holy lands and the misty, illusory manor all had solemn expressions on their faces as they stared unblinkingly at the slowly swelling 5-colored seal. None of them had expected that the time limit for the seal to be broken was so much earlier than expected. Their faces were all solemn. The leader, a white-clothed man with a tall hat, frowned and hurriedly said a few words. Then he waved his right hand a few times. 6 purple-clothed men quietly hid in the south, while the 6 white-clothed men disappeared in the east. Another 3 blue-clothed men suddenly leaped up and landed on the 3 tallest trees. Although the trees were shaking violently in the heaven and earth trembling, they seemed to have fused with the tree trunk and were not affected at all. Remaining were 11 men in loose robes and 9 burly men in ragged clothes. These burly men were all extremely burly and had fierce expressions on their faces. However, the light in their eyes was slightly scattered, as if they were seriously injured. These 9 burly men were the senior beast kings of Tian-Fa. The 5-colored seal was divided into 9 directions. For the past 300 years, these 9 beast kings of Tian-Fa had been dutifully guarding a corner, using all their energy to cooperate with the seal to resist the attacks of the 9 serenities and 14 masters. And in the recent years, they finally could not hold on any longer and inevitably suffered serious internal injuries. Otherwise, the 9 serenities and 14 masters would not have broken the seal. But even so, even though they knew that the Misty Mansion was up to no good and that the 9 serenities and 14 masters was about to come out, they still stayed here and did not leave their posts. Further away, Bear Mountain, Long Crane, and the other beast kings of Tian-Fa were watching this scene nervously. The leader of the white-robed men looked at the 9 of them, and a trace of shame flashed across his eyes. He said in a low voice, "Once the 9 serenities and 14 masters appear, kill them with all your strength. Do not let them escape from the Tian-Fa forest." The 9 burly men trembled at the same time and looked at him in surprise. Anger appeared in their eyes. The one in the middle stepped forward and shouted, "Brother Chow, you must not do this. If we fight here, what will happen to our Tion FA? Won't we be destroyed in this battle? Brother Liu, if we don't fight here, are you going to wait for the 9 serenities and 14 masters to recover and slaughter us calmly? That Brother Chow hid his hands in his sleeves and said gloomily, "Besides, this place is far away from human habitation and isolated from the world. It is the best place to deal with them." But we clearly agreed that we couldn't start a war in Tion FA. Not any time. That's why we agreed to guard the seal. Do you think that we don't know the effect of the fog in your misty mansion? The burly man said angrily, "Are you going to disregard that promise? Tion FA is indeed far away from human habitation. But aren't we Shin beasts of Tion FA also living beings? We have also protected the continent for 10,000 years. So what?" Before that man could finish his words, everyone's faces changed. That Brother Chow did not have time to finish his words. He shouted, "Set up the formation!" Finally. Chapter 802. A black figure rushed out of a dark cave with an earth-shattering laugh and soared into the sky. Behind him, the pitch-black hole suddenly distorted and strangely disappeared. The moment the black figure rushed out, the 11 men in loose robes on the ground attacked at the same time. They rushed from 11 directions, up in the sky and down on the ground. The distance between each of them was exactly the same. It was as if these 11 people were a single entity. In midair, the 11 people shouted at the same time, "Power of heaven and earth! Imprison!" Suddenly, from the sky to the ground, the power from all directions converged into a huge enclosed space, completely enveloping the 9 serenities and 14 masters' soaring body. Then, the 11 people did not stop and rushed in wildly. They punched and kicked. In an instant, it was as if 11 hurricanes that could destroy heaven and earth suddenly blew up and converged into a raging tornado. The tornado swept towards the same location. They did not use their weapons, because they all knew that it was meaningless to use weapons at this moment. The only correct way was to use their Xian-Qi to speed up the consumption of the 9 serenities and 14 masters' remaining strength. The 9 serenities and 14 masters was a little regretful. He was still a little too impulsive. This was because he had broken through the seal. Although it saved him a lot of energy, the price he had to pay was not small. Especially when he was angry with the 9 firmament first elder. He had forcefully used up a lot of his Xian-Qi. It was almost equivalent to 1/3 of his Xian-Qi. Coupled with the series of continuous impacts, his internal organs were unbearably uncomfortable. Right now, the consumption of his Xian-Qi had far exceeded his expectations. At the end of the day, he shouldn't have used the void-shattering technique. And because he was in a hurry to escape, he didn't even have time to rest and recover, asking for that person's help to undo the seal. He didn't expect that the 9 firmament first old master would be able to cause a crack to appear in the seal in such a short time. The crack in the seal was fleeting, so he naturally had to attack it immediately. This series of changes made the 9 nether 14th young master situation even worse. The situation might not be any better than him removing the seal himself. Right now, he just wanted to find a place to heal. How could he be interested in paying attention to these people? But now, even if he wanted to ignore it, he couldn't, because any one of these fellows in front of him was very powerful. The 11 of them combined to form a huge torrent. If he didn't deal with it carefully, he would probably be injured in just one move with less than 20 to 30% of his strength left. The 9 serenities and 14 masters were furious. In midair, he suddenly shouted angrily, "Scram!" With a spin of his body, he suddenly brought along a black hurricane. It was like a deep fog, and in a split second, it had spread several feet around him. It rose, surged, and swept out. The cage of heaven and earth that the 7 holy kings and 4 holy emperors worked together to form was instantly shattered by his body. Then his body continued to rise, and his body spun like a whirlwind. With a swoosh, 11 streams of chi attacked at the same time. It was as sharp as lightning, but it was like a thunderclap that could collapse a mountain. The 11 of them roared at the same time and suddenly approached each other in midair. The 11 of them held hands to form a huge circle and forcefully endured the terrifying counterattack of the 9 serenities and 14 masters. There was a series of banging sounds, and then the 11 of them spat out a mouthful of blood at the same time. They let go of their hands at the same time. The leader of the group was the fastest. The blood in his mouth had just formed, but he was already the first to pounce. Just as the blood was spat out, his body had already reached the side of the 9 serenities and 14 masters. The mouthful of blood was like a sharp sword, and it sprayed on the body of the 9 serenities and 14 masters with a puff. It actually caused a loud bang. Then, both of his hands pressed on the chest of the 9 serenities and 14 masters. The tentacles were like cotton, and the 9 serenities and 14 masters coughed violently. He turned his head, and his eyes flashed like lightning. He retracted his right hand, and with a push, a black light flashed. With a bang, the Holy Emperor fell from the sky. He had defeated the Holy Emperor with one move, but he had still managed to stop the 9 serenities and 14 masters. The other 10 people had already closed in on him. The 9 serenities and 14 masters roared angrily. His hands and feet were wide open, and he violently bombarded them. However, he still remembered his promise just now. As he fought, he rose into the sky and tried not to cause too much damage to the Tion FA forest. Continuous screams rang out, and the 10 figures fell in 10 different directions almost at the same time. Every one of them was spitting out blood. Halfway through the fall, the sound of bones breaking could be heard from their bodies. Although the 9 serenities and 14 masters had severely injured the 10 strong enemies in the air, he could not help but tremble. With a wah sound, he spat out a mouthful of blood. The blood was as black as ink. His blood was actually black. Then, his figure turned around like a meteor in the air. Even though he was seriously injured, he was still able to move as he wished, and he fled towards the south. He could not fight for long, and he had to leave as soon as possible. That was his thought. However, things did not go according to his plan. Just at this moment, a purple light suddenly appeared in the sky, and a total of 6 purple figures appeared like thunder and lightning. They blocked in front of him and flew towards him head-on. Unexpectedly, every one of them had the posture of risking their lives to perish together with him. 6 directions, with both offense and defense. Furthermore, this kind of miraculous teamwork meant that if the 9 Nether 14th young master tried to escape head-on, these 6 people would instantly deal him a fatal blow. Because once he escaped, no matter if he went left, right, up or down, there would inevitably be openings. Moreover, the positions of these 6 people had already locked down all possible openings. Only by fighting head-on would there be a way out. A war of attrition. This was the joint attack that the 3 Holy Lands had specially developed to deal with people like the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters. What kind of person was the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters? He instantly analyzed the situation in front of him. With a loud roar, his body suddenly expanded in the air. His strange hair shot up into the sky, and his body was surrounded by a black aura. He suddenly expanded and exploded. His body flashed in the air, and 6-9 Nether 14th young masters suddenly appeared in midair. Every single one of them was real and lifelike. They faced the 6 purple-clothed people. The clones attacked at the same time. A loud explosion resounded. Although the 6 purple-clothed people had a formation to rely on, they were still no match. Once the 2 sides collided, the 6 people immediately felt as if their arms were about to break, and their chests felt as if they had been hit by a 10,000-pound hammer. They did not even have time to scream before they were sent flying far away. Among them, 2 of them suddenly had their hands, legs, and heads separated from their bodies when they were flying, turning into a rain of blood. After this attack, the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters did not seem to have gained much of an advantage. He spat out another 3 or 4 mouthfuls of black blood, and the black light in his eyes dimmed. He somersaulted a few times in the air and was sent flying in the northeast direction by the huge force. His body had nowhere to borrow strength in the air. The northeast direction was a trap set up by the experts who besieged him. The 6 people in white flew out without a word. Before they arrived, the powerful Xian Qi gathered together to form an attack that was about to hit him. After breaking through the seal, the 9 serenities and 14 masters did not have much strength left. After going through such a fierce battle, he was almost an arrow at the end of its flight. Seeing the 6 people in white attacking him in the blink of an eye, he suddenly roared crazily. He shook his arms and forcefully stabilized himself in the void. His ragged clothes fluttered in the wind. The eyes of the 9 serenities and 14 masters instantly turned into 2 deep black holes. There was no expression, but his murderous intent filled the sky. Suddenly, a cruel smile appeared on the corner of his mouth, and he shouted in a deep voice, "Stop!" The 6 people had just flown closer, but the 3 people in front suddenly maintained their original posture and could not move in the air. Their faces showed a sad and desperate expression. The 9 serenities and 14 masters did not hesitate. Almost as soon as the word "stop" came out of his mouth, he immediately pressed down with his hands. The hurricane rose from the bottom up, as if thousands of dragons suddenly surrounded the body of the 9 serenities and 14 masters and rose from the ground. Then Lang shouted, "Break!" Boom! The space where the 3 white-clothed people were suddenly warped, and then it suddenly turned into a black hole in broad daylight, and the 3 white-clothed people instantly disappeared without a trace. The black hole twisted and slowly disappeared, shattering the void. A holy emperor and 2 holy kings. They died a wrongful death just like that. However, this attack was obviously the last attack that the 9 serenities and 14 masters could use. He was forced to use the sure-kill move of shattering the void once again, but this time he had used up almost all of his strength. He had even squeezed out the last bit of his energy by overdrawing it. He did not want to use it at first. However, the 6 people in white in front of him had obviously set up a very mysterious formation. If he were to fight again, although it would only be a short time, it would be enough for the 11 people below to recover. When that time came, he would really be finished. If he used up too much energy this time, he was afraid that he would not even have the strength to escape back to the dark cave and would be killed by this group of people. Therefore, the 9 serenities and 14 masters had no choice but to use it. The effect of shattering the void was immediate. 3 people died. 3 people retreated. The 9 serenities and 14 masters used up all his remaining strength this time. His body suddenly swept horizontally, and he flew out like lightning. He shouted hoarsely, "It's been more than 300 years, and you still can't change this despicable habit. I will settle this score with you sooner or later." At this moment, 3 brilliant and amazing sword lights suddenly shot out from a big tree not far away, like 3 shocking rainbows. Like a meteor, like lightning, before the sword light appeared, the sword edge had already arrived. 3 peerless divine swords stabbed straight at the 9 serenities and 14 masters. This was the real killer move. All the previous arrangements and sacrifices were just to consume the remaining strength of the 9 serenities and 14 masters. The real killer move was to kill at the most critical moment. One hit, one kill. The 9 serenities and 14 masters really could not avoid these 3 swords. Chapter 803. The 9 serenities and 14 masters roared. Black light flashed in his eyes. He only had time to raise his right hand, which was glowing with black light, and pat the top of his head. A thick black aura gushed out from it. At this moment, the 9 serenities and 14 masters' expression became extremely resentful. He was also extremely helpless. Suddenly, black gas rose from his body again. This was a way to destroy himself, to stimulate the potential in his body. Even in the past, he had not used this move. But now he was forced to this point. But it was too late. How fast was the flying speed of a sword? Swoosh! A sword had already passed through his left chest, and a shining blade had pierced through his back. Black blood splattered everywhere. The 9 serenities and 14 masters screamed. His body twisted, and his muscles, bones, and blood vessels all turned into fine steel. Before the mystical energy on the sword could explode, it had already been broken. His body was actually harder than steel, and he actually used the momentum of this long sword to fly out diagonally. He flew 200 feet. He was still running. Swoosh! Another sword. This time, the sword pierced through his back and came out from his chest. The 9 serenities and 14 masters coughed violently. His body twisted again, and with a snap, another sword that could cut through gold and jade broke on his body. Right at this moment, the third sword, the final fatal sword, came again. This sword pierced through his lower abdomen and came out from his back near his shoulder. From the bottom to the top, it covered almost his entire body. 3 sword strikes. All of them were fatal. All of them hit. However, the 9 serenities and 14 masters roared at the sky. The black gas around his body suddenly became so thick that it was enough to cover his entire body. Then, with a snap, the third sword. Break! Then, he fiercely stretched out a hand that was covered in black blood, and his 5 fingers stabbed into the head of the expert who had sent out the third sword. When he pulled it out, the black blood had turned bright red. As for that expert, after he withdrew his hand, his head had already turned into a skull that looked like it had been dried for millions of years. His body swayed like a falling leaf and fell from the sky. Then, the 9 nether 14th young master let out a long howl. The 3 swords on his body were still shining brightly, shining with golden light under the sunlight. But just like that, he brought these 3 swords with him and flashed 100 jong away. In a flash, he disappeared. From start to finish, he didn't land on the ground. His body was always in midair without any support, completely treading on the void. After a great battle, he disappeared. Just like that, he fulfilled his promise to June Moxie. The price was a body full of fatal injuries. At this time, the 11 people on the ground had just landed and were rising again. But it was already too late. Everything happened in an instant. It could be seen how fast this battle was going. In the blink of an eye, nearly 30 experts had exchanged a blow. Some died, some were injured, and some fled. This was the true meaning of the phrase. The world changed in an instant. Only those who had witnessed this battle could truly understand the meaning of this phrase. Far away in the sky, only the resentful voice of the 9 serenities and 14 masters could be heard. Just you wait. A legend was indeed a legend. The 9 serenities and 14 masters had suffered a series of heavy injuries, and his exquisite skills were all used up. But under such a bleak situation, he was still able to escape, and he was even able to catch up to his pursuers. Amazing, truly amazing. June Moxie, who had been hiding in midair and watching the battle, saw that the 14th master was in danger and wanted to lend a helping hand. After all, with the 14th master helping him share the pressure from the 3 holy lands, the advantages outweighed the disadvantages. But what happened next caused him to be dumbfounded, and his whole body was covered in cold sweat. This was not because he was scared, but because he was shocked. He saw that the 9 serenities and 14 masters had used his own strength to fight 26 of the world's top experts, heavily injuring several of them and killing 6 of them. Finally, he managed to escape with a body full of injuries. His tongue almost fell out of his mouth. And from the beginning to the end, this fellow still cared about the agreement between the 2 of them. The entire battle was carried out in the sky, and he would rather suffer losses than land on the ground. This is a true demon. Everyone said that he was a demon, but compared to the 9 serenities and 14 masters, it was an exaggeration to say that he was a child in the presence of an adult. There was really no comparison. They were not on the same level at all. In the alliance army of the misty, illusory manor and the 3 holy lands, the 20 to 30 experts that were originally as transcendent as immortals had been killed by him, and 7 to 8 were heavily injured. Almost all of them had light injuries, These top experts, who rarely gathered together, could only look at each other in dismay. Everyone's faces were filled with extreme shock. There was also an inexplicable sense of loss. They had gathered so many peak experts, made such a meticulous arrangement, and even held the determination to fight to the death. Even with so many advantageous factors combined, they were still unable to annihilate that calamitous demon and let him escape. Looking at the bloodstains on everyone's body, everyone was momentarily speechless. Faced with the combined attacks of 8 Saint Emperors, 18 Saint Kings taking turns to attack, and suffering 3 fatal injuries, they still managed to break their swords and swagger away. This kind of earth-shattering divine ability, it was really unimaginable. The leader of the Holy Emperor sighed and raised his right hand. A dazzling light shot into the sky, reaching several hundred feet high. Then, with a loud boom, it exploded in the sky. Following that, there was another explosion in the distance. The people outside have already received the news. They will take over and continue to hunt down the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters. With that demon's current state, he may not be able to escape safely. This person frowned, and his face turned pale. Suddenly, a stream of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. Just throwing out a communication rocket was naturally not difficult, but to throw it several hundred feet high, that was not something an ordinary person could do. This throw had obviously triggered the internal injuries that he had forcefully suppressed earlier. Brother Chow, don't worry. Although the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters is strong, he has spent a lot of energy to break the seal and fought with us. He must be at the end of his rope. I believe that this time, he definitely won't be lucky. Another person sat cross-legged on the ground and said seriously as he circulated his energy to heal his injuries. Don't be blindly optimistic. The 9 Serenities tribe's unique, powerful recovery ability is far above our Holy Realm's recovery ability. We have all seen it before. Although this beast's injuries are severe, it's not to the extent that it's enough to kill him. Brother Chow frowned and sighed. He thought for a while and said, "This demon forcefully broke the seal this time. Although he broke the seal early, his strength must have been greatly reduced. At most, he only has 40% of his full strength. The combined attack of the 26 of us is extremely powerful. I believe that his internal organs must have been severely shaken and caused extremely serious internal injuries. As for my 2 palms, I'm confident that they've already broken a few of his ribs. Also, the attacks of the Saint Emperors from the Blood Sea and the 6-man formation from the Sacred Ground forced him to use Shatter the Void. That also exhausted the last of his remaining potential. Those last 3 sword strikes. As he spoke, he gestured with his own body. All 3 swords hit, 2 on the chest, and the 3rd directly pierced through his entire abdomen. All of them were fatal injuries. But under such fatal attacks, he did not die on the spot. Instead, he was still able to escape, and we couldn't catch up to him. The 9 Serenities and 14 Masters really lives up to his name. Meeting him is better than hearing about him. Such shocking strength. We will never be able to achieve it in this lifetime." The other purple-clothed man coughed. It was obvious that his internal organs had been shaken. There was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth, but he said, "That's right. These injuries are enough to kill 3 holy emperors at the same time. Even if we exclude his special physique, this cultivation is still beyond our reach. Not to mention that he killed 6 of our people in the fight. 2 holy emperors and 4 holy kings. You should know that the strength he displayed just now was at most equivalent to 40% of his original strength. With this calculation, everyone suddenly sucked in a breath of cold air. They only felt a chill rising from the soles of their feet all the way to their backs. This demon has finally appeared. Although these people were comforting each other as to whether or not the people outside could successfully intercept and kill the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters, in reality, everyone was thinking the same thing in their hearts. The chances were not too high. The real elite forces had all gathered here. The manpower here was already the most luxurious lineup that the three Holy Lands could put together. Everyone still did not know the hidden strength of the Misty Mansion, but the current lineup of the three Holy Lands was really at its peak. Other than the legendary ancestors of each family, who no one knew whether they were still alive or not, the Holy Emperor was already the most powerful force that the three Holy Lands could bring out. Even if the people outside were lucky enough to meet the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters, they might not have the ability to stop them. Who knows, they might even be sent to their deaths. It was impossible for the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters to die. The 9 Serenities and 14 Masters with only 40% of their strength was already so terrifying. Then, if the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters were to recover their full strength, what would the consequences be? Once they recovered, they would immediately set off an unprecedented reign of terror. That would be the end of the three Holy Lands' good days. No one would have thought that even with so many people gathered, so many peak experts, and such a meticulous plan, they still could not kill the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters. Looking at the 20 or so people who had already gathered, everyone had a bitter smile on their faces. Yes, bitter smiles. At their level, life and death were no longer a concern for them. As for the 6 people who had died in the battle just now, although they felt a sense of loss or pity, they did not feel too much sorrow. Life and death, it was just that. Anyone would have to go there sooner or later. Holy Emperor, Lord Shao, I need you to give us Tion Fa an explanation. Among the 9 burly men, the leader stepped forward. He had a leopard's head, round eyes, and a stocky build. He looked quite valiant, but his eyes were filled with extreme anger. That year, the 3 Holy Lands, 1 ferocious mansion, and 1 misty mansion made an oath together. One was to seize the heavens, and the other was to kill the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters. You and I were both there that day, and our words are still ringing in our ears. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.